start saying that this is already the most exciting World Championship match that Magnus Carlsen has ever played. Nepomniachtchi, he came close to a major upset yesterday, and today he's gonna have the white pieces. So welcome everyone to day 3 in the FIDE World Championship match. The champion and his challenger are tied after 2 games in Dubai, but Grandmaster David Howell, how close did Magnus Carlsen come to actually losing yesterday?
Actually, objectively, according to the computers, he was very close. He was definitely closer to losing than he was to winning. But Magnus Carlsen, he is resilient. He found some practical chances, and at some point, he was outplaying Nepomniachtchi. It was a really roller coaster game. Both sides had their chances, and in the end, a draw was a fair result.
Today's going to be game 3 in the same amount of days. Both games have lasted for 4 to 5 hours. Will they feel a little bit drained today, you think?
I think for sure they will be, but it was part of Magnus Carlsen's match strategy to draw out the games, especially at the beginning, just to test his challenger's stamina. And I think we might well be in for that again today, because tomorrow's a rest day. They can spend all of their energy today.
And did we also yesterday start to see the psychological battle being played out?
Yeah, I think it's going to increase as the days goes on, as they go on, the psychological battle. Yesterday we saw Nepomniachtchi barely spend any time at the board. He's trying to get in Magnus Carlsen's head maybe, and he's also trying to keep himself relaxed. So we'll see that psychological warfare continue today.
Yeah. The world champion, Magnus Carlsen, he had his first game with the white pieces yesterday, a game that gave us many big moments.
On the second day of the FIDE World Championship, Nepomniachtchi proved to be a dangerous challenger to Magnus Carlsen.
Look at this Black Knight. It's an intruder. It's a bit of an octopus there with all of its tentacles, controlling lots of squares in White's camp, and Magnus needs to get rid of that knight ASAP. Yeah, this shows Magnus is in the mood to fight. He wants to win, and he's not materialistic at all. We might well see Magnus give up a rook, that white rook in the bottom corner now. Look at this, Nepomniachtchi reacts instantly.
Wow.
Straight back to the board, move. Magnus now has a big dilemma to face. That rook in the corner is under fire, and that white dark square bishop also attacked. This one has reached boiling point now. The next couple of moves might decide the fate of this game. Whoa, this was not on my radar at all. He's just given up a pawn for free. What is the idea behind that one? He's still got his pen in his hand. He's trying to figure out what the point is.
Just see the hand kind of
it looks
make
like
that draw offer. Oh!
There we go, draw offer, and it is a draw.
At some point I blundered when I allowed knight c5, because I didn't intend to sack quite as much material as I actually did. Yeah, the position was very, very interesting. It was going my way for a bit, but I couldn't really find a plan, and then he certainly had chances as well.
Yeah, guys, it's another beautiful day in chess paradise. The weather's still nice and warm, beautiful, clear blue sky. And I was lucky enough to run into Judit Polgár herself, the chess legend. You are on your way to commentate the game, so I will just ask you a couple of quick questions. How are you enjoying your stay so far?
Oh, this is amazing. This is my first time that I'm commentating a World Championship match. But this is something very special. So anybody who can have the opportunity to come here, definitely it's something to come to the expo in Dubai.
Yeah, it is quite an experience. Do you have some thoughts or impressions of the game so far you would like to share with us?
Well, so far I think it's extremely exciting, because the kickoff game, game 1, was already very interesting when Magnus played the knight a5 move and sacrificed the pawn for initiative. It was a very interesting, very detailed game with very small nuances in there. So it was interesting where Magnus might have taken a little bit over, but when it was a little bit dangerous for Nepo, it was very clear that he was very much standing there, very clear. He said, okay, I just have to fix the position, bring my maneuvering with the knight, and then he saved the game, and it was just a repetition of moves. And yesterday's game was something absolutely amazing, I think, for Game 2 in a World Championship match. It was just ups and downs, endless ideas to talk about, to analyze, and I think all of us, when we were analyzing with Anish, it was like really endless, interesting ideas there. And there were moments which was extremely hard for Jan, especially after the opening. But in the middle game, it was very dangerous for Magnus, and it was so interesting to follow the players, how their body language gave some information also to us and to each other. But of course, some things it's not about body language. Some things are really what happens in the board. You cannot hide it. Magnus had to sacrifice material in order to stay in the game. And at the end, it was pretty clear that instead of little bit torturing more Jan, Magnus decided with his queen move, queen g4, to go into direction to simplification, and it was a draw. So these two draws was magnificent, and I'm very much looking forward for Game 3.
Well, thank you very much. This is Judit Polgár providing the expert commentary that you can find on the Deep Dive podcast, broadcast, I'm sorry. And I know you have to go and commentate right now, so I will let you go. Thank you very much. And guys, back to you.
Thanks so much, Rune and Judith, both on the ground in Dubai, but here in the studio, we have some excellent people to commentate on today's game. Also, Ginger GM Simon Williams, who spent yesterday at the Good Night. Was it fun?
It was great, yeah. It's a bit of a change being in here. I'll be honest, I quite enjoyed the Good Night.
Yeah.
But it's lovely to join you for the first time in the studio. Obviously, I've been watching the tour over the last year, and I'm here. I'm now here. So round 3, the day before the rest day, it's going to be a fantastic game, I think. And if one player wins, they're going to have a great lead going into that rest day. So exciting.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, at the Good Night yesterday, with a bunch of Norwegian fans being in Oslo, were they at some point getting a little nervous on Magnus's behalf?
I think the beer probably helps a bit. So this is the Good Night Chess Pub in Oslo, and they had the big screens over there, so they're watching the chess, they're enjoying the chess, and I think it was a real up and down game. So you could sort of feel with the vibe of the pub, because obviously everyone's supporting Magnus because he's Norwegian and he goes down there quite a lot. And Magnus was doing very well, people quite excited, but then obviously at one point it seemed like he might well lose the game, and there was a little bit of concern, maybe some more pints being pulled at the bar at that moment. And but it was a brilliant day, so much fun watching the action there. So yeah, great.
And it was a thrilling game, Jovanka. How did the Twitter world react to the action yesterday?
Everyone thought the game was absolutely intense. Again, everyone was concerned for Magnus, but again, impressed by Nepomniachtchi's defensive skills and how resourceful he was. And again, the game took so many twists and turns. It was absolutely incredible to see. And the consensus is everyone is psyched up for game number 3.
Yeah, and even Magnus, because Magnus Carlsen has tweeted, right?
He has tweeted, and it's a little bit of a cryptic tweet, but he has posted, the match is officially on. So I think he's saying, yep, look forward to what's about to come next.
I'm struggling to really officially on anyone. Do we get that?
I think our viewers will have to help us out there with the meaning of that tweet.
Because a very, a clever smile on his face there as well. And of course, we want people to keep tweeting today.
Of course, the match has been absolutely incredible so far. And we want you at home to be very much involved in this experience. So we're asking you to send us your selfies, show us where you're watching the match from, who you're watching the match with. And of course, you can also send us your move suggestions, your thoughts, anything funny that comes to mind. And you can do all this by tweeting us by using the hashtag C24Live.
Yep. Definitely. Go ahead, you guys. And, well, David, if the match keeps going like what we've seen in the first 2 days, I guess we're in for a lot of entertainment.
Yep, a lot of entertainment, and it feels like we're edging towards a decisive result. The first 2 games, despite the fact they were draws, they were full of twists and turns, and both players clinging on at some point. It's not going to be easy for them to kind of maintain that tension, to maintain their nerves. And, yeah, as we've all mentioned, as Judit mentioned herself, so much entertainment, and that is set to continue. I can't see any boring games between these guys for the rest of the match.
All right, and that leads me into the predictions challenge that you all can join in, of course, on Magnus Nepo, the prediction challenge. It's kind of a World Championship match fantasy game where you can challenge your friends and the entire chess community. We are all playing. How are you guys doing?
Despite David not playing yesterday, I'm still in bottom place now. Well, that goes to show how absolutely random it is, and also how well, good you have to be with your predictions. So I'm taking a little bit of a gamble today. I'm predicting that this game is actually going to be shorter than the games we've seen so far.
So how many moves have you
I've
put
predicted 35 moves.
Ooh, that's quite short.
I think the game is going to finish in a draw. And my reasoning for this is because the games so far have been incredibly intense. They've been tough and required a lot of endurance. So I'm thinking they might take it easy today. Now, this is a gamble on my behalf. And I don't think that Nepomniachtchi is going to repeat opening with a King's Pawn opening.
Yeah. What do you think, Simon? What's your predictions for this game? Who's going to win? Will
Pretty
it be a
much the
draw?
opposite to Jovanka there, I have to say. So, yeah, going to go against Jovanka. But I'm thinking it's going to follow probably the opening of the first game. So we're going to see this E4, E5 stuff. I don't think H3 will be played. So if anyone at home can remember this move. But I think some kind of anti-martial. And I expect a long game. I expect, like, I'm going to go, like, I think I said 65 moves. Something like this. And obviously a draw at the end. So they're going to give it a little go. But
That just sounds a lot more thrilling to me. You know, 35 moves and a win.
No, draw.
Sorry.
Draw.
I thought I put in a win for Nepomniachtchi with the white pieces today, and he looked fierce yesterday. How about you, David?
I'm boring. I went for the draw as well. I was about to choose your suggestion, Kaja. Actually, I said Nepomniachtchi might win the first game in the prediction challenge, and today I was close to saying that as well because he has the white pieces, because he's itching to win. But draw. Roy Lopez, 42 moves. That's my prediction.
I'm going to beat you guys. If Nepomniachtchi wins today, I'm going to score 10 points. And you guys can, of course, also join in the predictions challenge. So you will have some time to put your predictions for Game 3 in now, because we're going to have a short commercial break. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Today, more than ever, when the world comes together to create a better tomorrow.
It's going to be magic.
La magie. Magic.
Magic with music.
With architecture.
With colors.
Magic with celebration.
With your safety.
From here.
There.
And everywhere.
For 6 whole months, day and night.
Join the making of a new world, starting October 1st.
Welcome to the new Chess24 playing experience. Play in light mode or dark mode. Choose from a range of time controls or create a custom game and get paired with players from around the world fast. Enjoy a polished playing experience while making moves on a fresh, responsive board to claim your victories. Train and improve with over 80,000 puzzles. And that's not all. Download now and discover what more you can enjoy in our brand new app.
Now anyone can learn and improve their chess skills with the world champion, Magnus Carlsen. The Magnus Trainer app is packed with fun mini-games and interactive training content. playable anytime, anywhere. Get the Magnus Trainer, available in the App Store and Google Play.
Nepomniachtchi is here, arriving the arena in Dubai, ready for Game 3. He's going to have the white pieces. He did impress everyone yesterday with some fantastic moves. And the question is, what does he and his coach, Vladimir Potkin, have up their sleeve for Game 3 today with the white pieces? Nepomniachtchi, he is 31 years old, playing his very first World Championship match. He did learn chess at the age of 4, and here he is, looking sharp and ready for Game 3 in Dubai in the World Championship match. Can he score his first win in the match, Nepomniachtchi? As mentioned, he did learn chess at the age of 4, and he was what some people will call one of those child prodigies, not only in chess, also when it came to several subjects in school. We have been to Bryansk, where Jan was born and where he grew up, and we have talked to some people that knew him growing up.
I was born in Soviet Union, still in Soviet Union, in Bryansk. It's about 400 kilometers southwest from Moscow.
Now we are in the English classroom where Jan Nepomniachtchi learned English. He was a very curious boy with big, brown, very expressive eyes, full of curiosity and a lot of questions.
I think I was pretty usual child. I didn't really like to study. I preferred, some video games, some simple like Dandy or Sega, and of course like some football and some other active games with friends.
He was a very serious kid, so very nice looking. He was very stubborn, I should say, and he liked fighting with guys, so he had lots of problems. I think he was a bit different because he was a bit smaller, because he joined school quite early, but it was quite clear from the very beginning that he's very talented.
As he was very little, he usually sat on his knees. Sometimes I could see him emerge himself into his world of chess and forgot about everything.
He worked hardest I ever met regarding chess, I would say. I'm not sure he gave up something, but of course he had much less free time than we used to have.
During English class, he was asked a question about his favorite flower. As usual, children say rose, lily, but Jan asked me how it will be in English sirene. And I suddenly forgot it in English. And I saw a smile on his face. It was his victory over me. He could combine playing chess with great success in all subjects. He took part in Olympiad of different levels, in math, in Russian, and he always became the winner.
I remember that both of us had serious problems with painting teacher. So we had always clear thing that he would have the gold medal, but he could lose it because of the painting. I definitely think that he's not strict. He's very kind-hearted. He's very emotional. He is always ready to, to give more than to take, and that's quality of champion, I'm sure.
He left school at the age of 16, and I think that it was the happiest day in his day. I could show you this photo where Jan is smiling during his last school day, because now he can immerse himself and devote himself entirely to chess.
Jan Nepomniachtchi grew up in Bryansk, and his teacher and friend still big fans of him. And we mentioned he definitely was a child prodigy in chess. And I understand, Tanya, that you're also standing with what we should call a chess prodigy.
Hello to everyone from Dubai. Kaja, you're absolutely right about that. I do have a special guest with me. Now, today is a very special day here at the Dubai Expo at the World Championship match. It is the final game before the first rest day. And that means different dynamics come into play with the opening approach the players are going to have. Now, in these matches, it's really often about finding out what the opposing team has prepared. What is their core opening? And with one white, one black, both these teams have figured that out. So what is it going to be? Is it going to be a safety-first approach going into the rest day? Or will we see the same entertaining chess that we've been seeing in Game 1 and Game 2? To take us through more of that, I've got with me the second youngest grandmaster in history, a rising star in the chess world, Gukesh. Welcome.
Welcome. Hi.
Hi, Gukesh. Now, you are here participating in the World School Tournament. It's your first time at a World Championship match. How's the experience?
Actually, I've been in Chennai 2013, but not very close. Just one day I went there, and yeah, this is my second time.
Now, Gukesh, we know you've been playing a tournament here, but you've also been following Game 1 and Game 2. What do you think about the excitement that we witnessed?
Yeah, both these games, I mean, even though it is the start, it has been really exciting, and in both games, I think both players had winning chances. But okay, it was well played by both, and I think 2 draws is fine, but the games were extremely exciting. Yeah.
Absolutely. And what do you think is going to happen today? I mean, we've got the rest day coming up. Jan starts with the white pieces. Are we going to see a marshal, anti-marshal? What's your prediction?
I would probably say some anti-marshal, though I think H3 anti-marshal is not very likely, but it might be some other anti-marshal, or he might even try to play 1.d4 to see what Magnus has prepared there, because the next day is rest day, so I don't know, but I would say anti-marshal. Yeah.
And if it is an anti-marshal, now Magnus's knight a5 in Game 1, he got a good position. Do you think Magnus would mix it up?
I'm not very sure. H3 knight a5, he might repeat it because it was quite convincing, I think. And though, I mean, bishop b7 and d6 are also possible. Maybe d6 he won't play, but bishop b7 is possible. So, yeah. Although I don't think H3 anti-marshal is very likely. Yeah.
Gukesh, I've got to ask you now, of course, you're one of the rising stars of chess. You follow their games very closely. As a top-level grandmaster yourself, what do you think is Magnus's big strength and Jan's big strength?
Jan's big strength has always been his aggressive style and also his time management. It's sometimes he plays impulsive chess, but I think he has managed it now, and candidates he was also very solid and practical. So yeah, and Magnus's strength, always too many. Yeah.
Awesome. And finally, tell us what it's like to be in Dubai here. You're part of Team Polgár that won the Challengers Chess Tour. How's the experience been so far?
Yeah, it's very nice to be here in Dubai. I'm enjoying playing the World School event also. It's really nice to be here.
Thank you so much, Gukesh, for that. Thank you. So there we have it. Gukesh predicting that we might have a repeat by Magnus, but the H3 line that we saw that Jan played, 95 ideas, who knows what's going to happen. I'm going to go with 1e4 by Jan, and we'll see how it progresses. Back to you guys in the studio.
All right. Thank you, Tanya. And the game starts in 7 minutes, Game 3. So let's see what the players come up with in the opening. Gukesh there, only 15?
He's 15 now. He became a grandmaster at 12 years old, the third youngest in history after Abhimanyu Mishra and Sergey Karyakin. So a phenomenal talent. I've played him myself. He's going to go far.
Wow, yeah. And we did mention a chess prodigy. Nepomniachtchi also seemed to be a chess prodigy, excelling quite young, only 4 years old. You're born in the same year, David, both you, Jan and Magnus. When do you remember meeting Jan for the first time?
I remember Greece in the year 2000. We were both about 9 years old, 10 years old, and we actually played in the European Under-10 Championship. And I just remember this cute little smiley kid. He would always bring a notebook with him to every game with handwritten chess moves in them, and he would sit on that notebook for luck during each game.
Aww.
And our first encounter was a draw, and he won the gold medal, I got the silver, and I don't know, we got on really, really well. And you could tell even back in those days, he was so determined, so stubborn, and that helped his chess, I think. He was so focused on the chess, just like his school teachers said. So, yeah, big talent when he was young.
What is Jan known for, Simon, in the chess world? His style, sort of. What is he known for?
Well, generally, he's a very aggressive player. So we kind of seen that a bit, I think, in the second game. He missed his chance there. I'd like to see him in this game. I mean, I did say he's probably going to go e4, but I'd love to see him push that d-pawn and just go for something a little bit more unbalanced and a little bit more, put some pressure on Magnus. The danger I'm thinking, though, is that it's the day before the rest day, you lose this game and you're going to be quite scared. You know, you go into the rest day, you have to think about it, and that's a major problem. So will they want to risk that or come out fresh and try after the rest day? But I hope it's d4, but I'm expecting the king's pawn to be pushed.
All right. Well, it's interesting you said that, because I've been told that Magnus has now also arrived the arena in Dubai, like yesterday, spending 5 to 10 minutes in his car together with Peter Heine Nielsen before leaving. So it sounds so strange, David. Wouldn't they have planned everything before this?
Yeah, you would have thought so. Maybe Peter Heine Nielsen, Magnus's coach, and his charge, maybe they're just discussing openings. Maybe it's just a motivational chat. Maybe they're just meditating together. Who knows? But either way, there we see another good friend, another Magnus, just helping him with some bags. And yeah, it's strange. Maybe Magnus just calming those last-minute nerves, emerging now with a smile on his face.
Yeah, look at that. After 10 minutes in the car with his coach, Peter Heine Nielsen, coming out with a black suit, playing with the black pieces today, and a big smile on his face. And you talk about the draining, Simon, that it is the day before the rest day. But is this also, Jovanka, a good possibility for Magnus? Because he is saying that he is, you know, maybe lasts longer than Jan Nepomniachtchi, that he is, you know,
this
better
could be
physically trained, that this could be a game for him to go for the kill.
Right, this could be a critical game for him to strike, and especially when you consider what's happened in game 1 and 2. Both games emotionally very draining, very, very complex positions. They've had to use a lot of brain power, and we've kind of traditionally thought that, you know, Magnus is the fit, you know, physically fit guy, you know, and he's the one who's able to string on the games for hours and hours on end. So it might be the right time to pounce. But it could also be a situation where the players just think, hang on, you know, it's been an intense start. Let's just take a rest and wait and see and take the action in game 4.
How would you balance it, David? So going into the rest day with a loss, if you push too hard, devastating, or, you know, the other player maybe a little drained, maybe it is the possibility to go for a win.
You know me, Kaja. I just like my long games.
Yeah, exactly.
I just like sitting at the board and playing. And I think the players, they need to get all the thoughts of future games out of their mind. They need to take it game by game. In general, in World Championship matches, that's the key. So just pour everything into this game. They can chill tomorrow, they can reassess tomorrow, or recover from that defeat tomorrow. But I think just focus on today. And Magnus, he was smiling, he was looking in a relaxed mood, and he will arrive at the board soon. Meanwhile, Nepomniachtchi waiting for him.
It's going to be so exciting to see what Jan Nepomniachtchi, in his second game with the white pieces, brings to the board today. Will it be the same that he did in game 1? That is what Simon is predicting. Something of the same. We did say, however, that Magnus was maybe the winner of the opening stage in game 1.
Yep, on paper it was a roughly equal position, but Magnus got his type, his style of position, and he also got in maybe the first small surprise. And handshake, they're getting ready to go.
All right, what will it be? And we see Maurice actually in the background.
Grandmaster himself.
Will he make the first move, or is he here just to announce the beginning of it? Maurice, also the person who leads the press conferences in Dubai.
Yeah, usually there is a guest making the ceremonial first move. We'll see whether that happens today. The players aren't obliged to stick to that first move, of course.
Can we see G4?
G for ginger.
Okay, cowboy B3, if you really want to shake things up a little bit. And
actually, that's one thing that we very rarely see in World Championship matches, are surprises on the first move. Usually players are very strictly sticking to one E4 or one D4.
I do remember one surprise, though, and that was Vishy Anand against Garry Kasparov, where he played the Scandinavian on move 1.
Ooh. And what first move would that be?
That would have been to a response to the King's Pawn opening. It would have been actually picking up the Queen's Pawn and moving it 2 squares, directly challenging the pawn. Don't often see that move at all.
So that's not your bet today then?
Gary won, I think.
Yep.
But Anand had a great position though. Or Scandinavian. Yeah.
Meanwhile, the special guests are arriving.
And both players seem to not focus on that. They seem to be deep into thought, and the special guest will make the first move. Let's see if that's what Jan wants to go for, or if he's going to take the piece back.
Okay.
Okay.
1d4 has been played by the guest. Will we see Nepomniachtchi retract that move?
Taking it back.
He's taking it back. He's not letting it stand.
Clocks are starting, and we're going to see what opening Jan Nepomniachtchi brings to the table in Game 3. Here we go.
Okay, I think he's pushed e4.
He's going e4.
Oh,
Looks like he's pushed his king's pawn. Yes, he has indeed, and Magnus reacts in kind, also pushing his king's pawn. We're heading in the same path as Game 1. Simon, your prediction might have been correct. I know you wanted to see d4, but...
Yeah, I'm a little bit upset, I have to say, because the martial kind of things, well, you know, these guys have analysed those positions so well that it's quite likely, you know, they're going to get to a position which is just could be drawn out, you know. So we'll see anyway after knight c6.
He's paused on move 3, so is Bishop going to come out? Yeah, it has. Okay, well,
Bishop b5. So.
There goes my prediction challenge.
Yeah, a complete replica so far of the game on day 1. It's the Spanish. I was wondering whether there might be an Italian white developing the bishop to a different square. That is really topical, really popular right now, but still the players playing quickly and copying their first game. So black bringing the knight out, white castling the king. Will we see Magnus repeat the opening? We mentioned that maybe he was quite successful there. If so, he does continue. He brings his bishop out 1 square. And in that last game, Jan Nepomniachtchi slid his rook across. He's doing the same again.
Okay, so we're still in Game 1.
Still in Game 1. And
wow.
Who's going to blink first? Who's going to be coming up with those new moves, those new ideas? Who's going to get the first surprise in? That is the key right now. Still copying Game 1. White's bishop has been attacked. It has to retreat. And in that game, Magnus now castled as black. He castled his king. He's done it again. Look at Magnus' body language. Not so energetic right now, but he knows that this was predictable. He knows that he's done this all before. He's seen it all before.
Okay.
And Jan Nepomniachtchi, this is actually the key moment that Simon mentioned. Last time, he picked up his pawn on the other side of the board, his h-pawn. It's the first new move of the World Championship match. He's played an anti-martial, but it's a different anti-martial. He's pushed a pawn on the other side, the queen side. And still a very popular move, but Magnus slightly frowning and pausing.
And it seems Jan Nepomniachtchi leaving the board here. He's expecting Magnus now to take a pause and think about what to do next.
Yep. Magnus won't be that surprised by this move. Magnus has had this position probably hundreds of times before with both white and with black, but it wasn't what Nepomniachtchi employed last time. So here I'm expecting Magnus to think for maybe 1 or 2 minutes. I think Nepomniachtchi also expecting that, and once Magnus replies, he'll get back to the board. Here, black has a few options. He can push the black b-pawn forward, the black pawn that's just been attacked by white's pawn. He can push it forward 1 square. He can develop his bishop. This is the older move. This is the more classical move. He could also have moved a rook. Daniel Dubov, very famous Russian player, has also employed a very ambitious pawn sacrifice in that position. But no, Magnus just developing his bishop, protecting the black rook in that top corner, just in case there is a set of pawn trades. And yeah, relatively standard stuff so far.
What is the name of this opening then?
Still the anti-martial.
Okay.
The anti-martial, which is a branch of the Ruy Lopez for the Spanish opening.
So Ruy Lopez is the name of the big thing, opening. Yeah.
Winning prediction today, Ruy Lopez.
Yeah.
So David, have you had this position many times yourself? Bishop b7 seems like a normal move there.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've got fond memories of this position from the black side, actually. I made one of my Grandmaster norms by winning a game with the black pieces in this exact position in a final round. And I also, in the London Chess Classic, in the first London Chess Classic, I managed to beat Ni Hua, a very strong Chinese player, with the black pieces in this position in order to come third behind Carlsen and Kramnik, actually. So
I guess we can sort of say it's going to be quite a long manoeuvring game after this opening. Both sides just no exchanges,
anytime
moving their pieces around and playing this. So, yeah, but pretty equal this opening so far.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Pretty equal, but both sides will have their ideas. So, yeah, each player just pushing a pawn in the centre, just solidifying their structure. Simon, have you had much experience on either side of these?
Not at all. No, I normally always go push my pawn to f4 and move 2, which is...
Done that against me?
I have done it against you, yeah. I mean, actually, interestingly, Jan did a chessball course on the King's Gambit, which is an opening where you give up a pawn on the second move. But at this level, what made yesterday's game so surprising was the fact that, you know, there was lots of sacrifices, the pawn exchange from Magnus, but generally you can't get away with sacrificing pawns earlier on, you know, in World Championship games. So standard manoeuvring here, both sides just getting their pieces to decent squares to start the game.
Yeah. I mean, I love attacking kind of romantic openings like the King's Gambit, but just too much risk involved. High reward, but also high risk, and especially in an early stage, it makes sense to go back to this type of manoeuvring, quieter opening.
And what do you think of Jan Nepomniachtchi's choice? You know, this is very much following all the main ideas of this position. I mean, is there any scope for surprises in this, or is it kind of like well-trodden paths, and maybe the position might just fizzle out?
Yeah, I think the surprises will come a bit later on. Both sides for sure would have analysed this position, and it's not actually about memorising exact variations, long forcing lines. It's more about where to put the pieces, about the long-term plan. So if Nepomniachtchi and Carlsen, they've both studied this position, I wouldn't have been surprised if they've played training games, for example, against their coaches, just to see, OK, I'm comfortable with my pieces on this side of the board, or this is my plan over the next 10, 15 moves. And despite the fact Magnus is thinking, he's just maybe just trying to recall how he felt most comfortable placing his pieces. So no surprises yet. I don't see this one fizzling out anytime soon. I think this will be a long game, as Simon mentioned.
Yeah. And I'm just checking. Actually, I'm searching this position on GChess, and I have to say, you know, GChess is quite unusual in that it's the first ever website where you can just put up a position and you can search that position over chess databases, chess articles, even YouTube, and of course Chessable as well. And here I'm just seeing that there's a lot of articles on this particular move, you know, and they're telling me right now that Kasparov prepared this move for his 1993 encounter with Nigel Short. And that was also another World Championship match. And lots of information here. Apparently the old main line has actually developed the knight to a different location, and everyone used to do that. So all the hot stuff right now.
GChess, yeah.
It's the place to be.
It is.
So, yeah.
Jovanka, so maybe talk us through. You mentioned that developing the knight to a different square is the main line. This one would have put...
the old main line.
The old main line, sorry. This would have put more pressure on this pawn. This is where I have more experience as well. But white, Nepomniachtchi, maybe with a small surprise, not choosing the most active square, choosing maybe a slightly more passive square for now, but he wants to reroute his knight towards the king side.
So all the action will be on the king side.
That's right. Actually, in this opening, the most common plan, for example, if black makes a move, is to park the knight next to its fellow here. Again, if black makes a move. And these two knights together, they're great defenders, but they can be great attackers as well later on.
Yeah, very tense position.
There was a lot of chat yesterday about potentially who the seconds could be for the players, and I'm guessing the way they play the openings, like playing this knight out in front of the queen, knight to d2, you have to ask, do any of the seconds, likely maybe Sergey Karyakin? I know he played a lot of positions like this. Could he be helping, you know, obviously played Magnus for the World Championships as well, but he liked this kind of slow manoeuvring idea, and he tried this in that World Championship match against Magnus Carlsen, which of course ended in a number of draws. But it's kind of, I still think at this stage of the World Championships, a bit of a sparring match. They haven't really got involved. Yesterday they did get involved, but they're still trying to suss each other out with their openings. And knight d2 is, it's maybe slightly, well, not slightly peculiar, but it's a different path to the main line.
And, well, Sergey Karyakin has posted on social media from Dubai, so he has at least been there. Maybe he's still there. And also, talking about this opening, every day Chessable makes a free course available on the opening of today. And today's course is Jan Gustafsson's E5 for black, and you can check it out on the link in the bottom of the screen. So while these players are playing out this game, you can dig deeper into the same kind of opening on Chessable. So have two screens open, watch this, watch the game unfold, and also dig deeper into the position.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge opportunity to learn from a world-class grandmaster like Jan Gustafsson, famous commentator, but also someone who has worked with Magnus Carlsen in the past. It's rumoured he might be part of the team now. Nobody knows, but Jan Gustafsson, he's one of the biggest experts on this opening from the black side. And Simon mentioned Sergey Karyakin, who has experience on both sides of this type of position as well. Also, for example, Peter Leko, who helped Jan Nepomniachtchi in the candidates match earlier this year. He's a big expert from the black side. And yeah, lots of names come to mind. But Jan Gustafsson's course there.
And I think Peter is a second, isn't he, for, I believe, for Jan.
I'm not sure it's been confirmed, but it's very likely, right?
I think I was doing commentary on one of the events that you guys were doing, and Peter was saying he was unavailable. I think it's very likely that Peter is a second for Jan during this match, which I don't know, he's a good second to have. He's a great theoretical player, so kind of guy you want behind you. I mean, I think it's interesting. I think Magnus and his team tends to go for seconds who he gets on well with, maybe more than just picking the best players in those openings. He wants someone who he likes.
Because they spend a lot of time together, probably, and training camps?
That's right, yeah, and just to get good vibes off them, to feel good. But maybe Jan is picking players, I don't know, he probably likes them as well, but he's picking players who are expert in those openings. So it's slightly different approaches, I guess, with who you're getting behind you as a team. And the team is so important, I feel. I mean, David, you nearly qualified for the candidates recently. I won't bring it up again too much, but it was great to see. We're all cheering for you. And if you got to the candidates, would you? I mean, what would be your approach? Would you like a second? Do you like working your own? I mean, do you think it's important to have someone who's an expert in the openings, or someone who can maybe help you a little bit, just emotionally?
I would love to kind of have that team around me just to kind of take the burden off in terms of doing the work, to keep those good vibes going, to feed you with new ideas. You always need some kind of inspiration at this top level. You can't just keep doing the same thing over and over again. So, I would have loved to have found some seconds. I'm not sure who I would have asked or who I would have found, but apart from this guy, apart from Simon. Actually, I was thinking a few years ago that you'd be the dream second for me, just because sometimes I kind of get in a bit of a funk and I lose a bit of creativity, and just to feed the ideas. But
that's very kind.
No, I'm not just saying that as well. I was thinking genuinely. And on the other side, I've been lucky enough to be a second for a couple of top players and just get a bit of insight into their regime and how things work. And it's intense once the chess starts. And that's why Magnus, I think, wants those people around him that he gets on with.
Yeah. What about you?
I was just going to say, we just saw a move there from Magnus Carlsen, and I just kind of wanted to point out that this is not the main move in this position. And actually, just checking the database, I can see it's like the 5th most popular move. So Magnus Carlsen doing what Magnus Carlsen does best, which is choosing those sidelines, which the opponent might not necessarily have studied. And the most popular move was actually to attack the bishop with the knight, put it on the a5 square. But Magnus says no, he wants a lot more flexibility in the position, so he's decided just to move the rook. And now Jan Nepomniachtchi has taken a pause, and I can tell you that the most popular move after that rook move is actually just to move the knight away from its d2 square, and that's it. As David highlighted before, just relocate the knight to f1 and then move it onto greener pastures.
Yeah, so very thematic stuff so far. The players will be familiar with these patterns, these ideas. It's just they will be deciding which order in which to use them. And there's maybe one thing Jan Nepomniachtchi is also considering, because Black's rook move has weakened the defence of a square, weakened the defence of a pawn. This pawn now is only defended by the Black king. It is eyed up by the White bishop, so possibly you could consider jumping forward with this knight and causing a double attack. And this would cause a big question to Magnus. Would he be forced to repeat and retreat his rook back to where it came from to defend this important pawn, or would he be able to push a pawn forward and block this bishop's diagonal? This would lead to a lot of crazy complications, and maybe Jan Nepomniachtchi, having been surprised by Magnus's last move, only the 5th most popular choice, this rook move, maybe he's thinking, okay, do I react just simply and calmly by retreating my knight, or do I get aggressive and try and punish him for playing a move I haven't looked at before? And what do we think, guys? Is that too ambitious? Is that this knight jump? It would be on my radar, but I'm not sure I would be brave enough to go for it.
Well, it has good stats in its favour.
Good stats?
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Well, only 3 games. It's a very small pool, but 3 games and 3 victories for White.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 100%.
So, yeah, it is. And it would kind of beg the question, right? And say to Magnus, hey, do you want to repeat the position 3 times, or do you want to take risks?
Yeah. This seems to be like one of Magnus's ideas, though, especially in the first 2 games. He played this knight a5 move, and yesterday he played this knight e5 move. He seems to be the first person to play something a little bit unusual in his previous games. And as this is the fifth choice, he's doing that again. And I generally think that's a very clever idea if you get the first slight surprise in, just to draw your opponent out of what they're used to playing. OK, we see another move here, David. Well, I'm sure this is a move you've played many times in this position as well, knight to f1. Do you play these positions, Jovanka? You're more d4 player, is that right? And
yeah, I never liked
yeah.
these type of positions. I did try around about 2007, 2008 to play these kind of positions, but there was too many pieces on the board and too much tension and not enough clear pawn breaks for me. So I decided, nope, not for me. Switched to playing the 1d4.
Yeah, actually, it's a bit like yesterday. Completely different opening, of course, but there weren't that many trades. There weren't that many exchanges of pieces, at least yesterday, for the first 20 or so moves. And it looks like we're heading in that direction again today, just manoeuvring. And it's all about planning here. It's not about tactics. It's not about any dynamism. It's pure planning and strategic play. And that's why maybe I was always attracted to these types of openings when I was progressing through the ranks. But it also means they're extremely difficult to handle. If you go for the wrong plan, things might get tricky for you.
Yeah, it's all about timing as well. I remember the very first trainer I had, when he tried to explain to me these type of positions, he just said it's about timing. You want to catch your opponent on the wrong foot. And but again, patience is the key there. And I do have a question from Paul on Twitter, who says that they heard that the players can see a computer screen view of the board in the players' lounge when they step away from the board. What are your views on this, especially when it's an over-the-board championship?
That's interesting. I think it's just commonplace. It's kind of normal nowadays to have a board. It's usually for spectators, of course, so that they can see what's going on. But for the players, it's strange. Looking at a board compared to looking at the screen is completely different. But at the same time, maybe Nepomniachtchi, maybe that's why he was away from the board so much yesterday, just because he felt more relaxed looking at a computer screen, looking at... I
kind of find it a bit weird that you can sit in the chill-out room or you can just look at the electronic board. I mean, it's sort of like, you just maybe have your banana or sandwich and the other guy's sitting at the board.
Maybe they shouldn't be allowed to have screens back there.
I mean, it's a different look because you kind of get used to obviously we play a lot online, but you're playing on the board, so the adjustment is quite hard.
Yeah.
But I find it a bit strange. I don't know. I find it like, because they don't need to be at the board then. Yeah. And it's like there's maybe more mind games coming into it. I mean, I can remember one World Championships. It was Kramnik versus Topalov. And they had their room behind, which they could go to. And there's a lot of controversy there where Kramnik was going to the room quite a lot and Topalov actually accused him of cheating because he was disappearing so much.
The toilet gate?
It was indeed a toilet gate, yeah, the toilet gate scandal. So, so it's a bit strange to me. I mean, I don't know if they should have those screens there personally.
Yeah.
Because you can remember the position anyway. So maybe it will encourage them to spend more time in their chill-out room.
Yeah,
so,
it could be cool as well. Then they would always have to go and check, has he made his move? Has he made his move? Now they obviously know on the screen when the move happens.
And I do wonder what are the kind of rules on chess, like whether you're allowed to be in your lounge when you know that your clock is ticking. And yeah, because I mean, I've always just rushed back to my board.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just.
I mean, historically, that's usually what we see, right? So we were very surprised yesterday when Nepomniachtchi spent most of the time on his clock in his lounge, and when he was ready to make his move, when he was finished sort of analysing and thinking, then he came to the board and made the move. Yes. Very strange.
Especially because if he was looking on the screens are always shown from the white side, and he had black yesterday, so it would have been a bit of a. How do I say this? A bit of a... it would have scrambled his mind a bit.
I can think of a word.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, right, OK.
I was going for that one as well.
Okay.
But, it would have scrambled his mind a bit to look on a screen from the white side. But
mind scramble, that's what you're going for.
Yes.
Yeah, just
from the black side, sitting at the board, it would have been a completely different feel. And like Jovanka says, kind of, again, it's chess etiquette, just general behaviour. You're not supposed to leave the board while it's your move. And if he knows it's his move, is he obliged to return? Can he just sit there and chill?
I think that is the weird question because, like, obviously, if it's your move at the board and you suddenly get off and walk out the hall, it's like, what's going on? This is really rude. I don't even know if it's illegal to do that.
You're not allowed to do that
actually,
because I've had situations where I've been at the. Okay, so we do have a move.
Bishop d2.
Bishop moves to the d2 square. Okay, so far so good. I can see on the database quite a few games, about 20 games so far. And a few grandmasters have played this position on the black side, and one significant name that jumps out at me is on the white side, Garry Kasparov played against Vladislav Tkachev in a rapid game.
So do we think Garry is Jan's second?
Oh!
Is that a potential? Has Garry done a bit of a Skype call over to Jan?
That would be a headline.
We want it back in Russia. Come on, get on the case. I'll help you out for a day or two.
Well, notoriously, Carlsen did work with Garry Kasparov.
So he would know a lot about Magnus, even if Magnus was quite young, right, when he worked with Garry Kasparov.
It was around 2008, 2009, I think.
Okay.
So it was just while Magnus was about to get to world number one. I remember I played Magnus in 2009, and he used an opening idea against me that he just picked up from Garry Kasparov a few weeks earlier, and it was scary to face. But yeah, somehow it feels like maybe Kasparov probably isn't in his training camp.
I don't think so.
You never know.
Is Garry playing at all now? I mean, obviously not, professionally, but is he sometimes showing up to some events and playing?
He's played 2 tournaments over
earlier
the summer.
this year.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. One of them didn't go so well. It was a rapid and blitz event, and maybe it was just a bit of rust. But then the next tournament he played, I think it was the Fischer Random, the Chess 960, and he did very well there, actually.
Cool.
At some point, he had big chances of winning it ahead of such names as Aronian and Nakamura.
Yeah,
he did very, very well there. So he still got it. It's just hard to get match fit again.
Yeah.
But he has such an aura that when he plays chess, I always think that he's got a chance of winning the tournament. Even though I know that he hasn't been a professional player for a long, long time, I still feel, you know what? I think he can do it.
Yeah.
16 years retired. Yeah, he's still a beast.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so a position that he has played. He has played this move that Jan Nepomniachtchi now made. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, what do you think of the position right now, David? Is it too early to call if the players are ambitious today, or?
I think we can definitely say that players are ambitious. I mean, this whole opening, keeping maximum tension by Nepomniachtchi, it shows he's not trying to guide the game towards a draw or guide it towards anything safe. I mean, while all the pieces remain, it could go in any direction, and it's purely about understanding. And Magnus, meanwhile, retreating his dark squared bishop out of the way of the black rook. Very sensible with the black bishop there, acting as the defender of the black king later on, maybe. So still very typical stuff, but I like the tension. I like having all the pawns, all the pieces on the board, no trades yet, and...
Can I show you the 2 approaches? Okay, well, Nepomniachtchi has made a very fast move. Okay, this is the main
moving
move
the knight
position.
again.
Yeah, it is pretty much better. There was another alternative which would have amped up the tension even more, and it was actually played by Garry Kasparov himself. He didn't actually move the knight to that square. Instead, he chose to pick up the c-pawn and challenge the pawn on b5 by playing c4.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So...
Okay. That's not so orthodox, actually.
No, I know.
That's something we very rarely see in this opening, because it does actually block in this bishop. And I think the idea is that if black just bypasses this pawn, if black locks things up, this bishop is a terrible piece. I guess the whole concept is to push this pawn forward at some point and try and reopen this bishop. It might come at the cost of a pawn, but now this bishop will eternally be a strong piece. So very interesting idea from Garry Kasparov there. Let's go to Jan Nepomniachtchi's move. However, he chose to bring his knight to the center first. So maybe this idea is still in the air for later by Garry Kasparov. And this knight, I mentioned it going in the other direction, but here it does have its eyes on 2 squares, one in the center of the board. This will stop any potential pawn breaks by black. Black can never push this pawn forward now. The square's covered too many times. But also the f5 square. We've talked about f5 so many times actually throughout the course of the Champions Chess Tour. Knights on f5 will thrive. I think that's what Kaja came up with. And normally that piece landing on that square will be the signal for an attack. So, for example, if white can land a knight on this square, it's just a launch pad, and there will be threats of sacrifices maybe later on. Maybe white will move the other knight out of the way, then start bringing the queen into the action, and lots of potential scary ideas for Magnus to face.
Sometimes you will be strict with the players, David, when they move their pieces too many times in the openings. But is this a good plan for Jan Nepomniachtchi, even if it will be the, 4th move with a knight?
4th move with a knight, and now Magnus moves a piece that's already been developed. I think it's fine in this scenario because both sides have castled. Mm-hmm. Both sides have moved pretty much all of their pieces once by now, especially their minor pieces, their bishops and knights. And once you've completed development, especially if the center is blocked, as it is at the moment, both sides kind of with nice pawn structures, then you do have the luxury of just maneuvering. And while the moves are continuing...
I've seen the evaluation bar as well. I mean, I hate looking at the evaluation bar so much. much. And this happened yesterday. And one thing I would advise actually is to try not to look at it too much sometimes, because it just jumps around, maybe doesn't catch up. But it really jumped there after Magnus's knight move. But that can't be a bad move. This is standard stuff, right?
It is the main move. And now the idea that we kind of showed earlier that Garry Kasparov used is now being put into operation. It is now maximum tension on that b5 pawn. And, well, OK, now this is interesting, because the main response is actually to reinforce that pawn and create even more all sorts of suspense and, I want to say tension again, in that side of the board. But Magnus, he chooses something else, and he goes for pawn takes pawn. And we kind of sense a pattern, actually. Jan Nepomniachtchi has been incredibly well prepared, but it looks like Magnus has just gone that one move deeper.
I mean, the one thing that amazed me with Magnus Carlsen, I mean, we talked about Jan following Garry Kasparov's game here, which I'm sure he's aware of. As you know Magnus very well, David, it's just Magnus's memory is phenomenal. The one story I can remember was he was playing, well, I don't think he was playing, but he came over to Reykjavik and they had this chess pub quiz over in Reykjavik, and it's 20 questions, but the questions are the hardest ever chess questions you can get. They're incredibly hard, and you get all these historians coming over just to do this pub quiz, and I think the highest score someone's got is like 17, and that's a team of 4. He came over with Hammer, so Hammer time, and he took part in it. And apparently Hammer's really bad at these quizzes, so it's mainly just Magnus doing it. And he got 19.5 out of 20. And it was random positions from games played 200 years ago, and you had to name the players and name what's going on. And he just knew it straight away. And it's just a phenomenal photographic memory. So I'm sure in this position, he's well aware of the C4 idea, and he has some good ideas about what to do, just like Jan does.
Yeah, and we see Magnus there just taking a step away from the board, still studying the position, though. And I wouldn't be surprised, as you mentioned, Simon, if he's completely familiar with that Kasparov game. And despite the fact both players now, they've spent about 10, 15 minutes on the clock, I think both players have actually looked at this exact position before. And if not this exact position, then at least the same ideas. And Black has just captured a pawn. Which way do we think he's going to recapture? With White? With a knight? With a bishop?
I mean, sorry, Jovanka. I was just thinking, I mean, if you take with the bishop, is there ever a d5 move you have to worry about? I'm not sure, but if you take with a pawn, you might lose the pawn, so I don't know. Maybe bishop takes or knight takes even. Knight takes coming to a5 looks like a good plan. Yeah, we could definitely make an argument for 2 recaptures here. I'm expecting White to take back with the knight, personally, but taking back with the bishop here for White, also very, very sensible. Let's see, Nepomniachtchi.
Only 2 games in the database.
OK.
And
what was the move played there? Did White recapture that pawn with the bishop? We're about to find out what Nepomniachtchi's going to do. It's with the knight.
they captured with the knight or the bishop. It didn't really matter. OK, so knight captures the pawn.
OK, so White's knight. You mentioned it, Kaja. It's moved so many times now. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4 times now this knight has moved.
But is the aim still to get to the f5 thriving square, or is that plan now off the board?
I think that plan for now is off the board because Magnus actually very cleverly retreated the black knight to cover that important f5 square. So Black's knight now, the one sitting in front of the black rook on e7, that piece was doing a purely defensive job, and it persuaded Nepomniachtchi to go away from his plan. And that's why the top players are so good. They're flexible. If they go for one plan, if it's stopped, then they'll switch to a different plan. And Nepomniachtchi, instead of going for the black king that we mentioned maybe is one potential idea, he's going instead for the other side of the board.
So do you think, because you mentioned, Jovanka, that getting to that f5 square with a knight for Jan Nepomniachtchi had a very good score. 3 games, 3 wins. Will Magnus have been aware of that and then made his plan to make sure Jan Nepomniachtchi is not able to go to that square?
Yeah, I think Magnus chose that particular move order because I think he wanted to play those mind games again with Jan Nepomniachtchi. Does Nepomniachtchi just try to repeat the position or not? And, he'll take the risk that maybe things get very, very sharp very quickly. And now the game has kind of taken a different turn. It's about manoeuvring the pieces again, getting ready to put your pieces on ideal squares, and of course getting ready to open up the position.
It's all about the knights.
It is all about the knights.
Yeah, they're doing a merry dance right now.
He's moved the knight again, so
back to where it came from just a few moves ago. Interesting. And
you seem surprised, David.
Yeah, I mean, I'm slightly I'm surprised, but also impressed that Magnus has clearly studied this position beforehand, even though I mean, it's so rare. I mean, Jovanka mentioned it's only been played once before this position up until now.
It's never been played now.
This last move was the first new one, right?
First move. But I can tell you, it has been studied.
Okay.
Someone came in October 27, 2021 and checked out this position. And there they actually analysed white moving the rook to the C1 square, to the open line. And did anything else happen after that? Let's have a look.
October 2021, you said?
Yeah. October 27, so just last month.
Peter Heine Nielsen?
That can't be a coincidence.
That cannot be a coincidence,
that sounds
you
very
guys.
suspect, doesn't it? So,
Someone from Team Nepomniachtchi or Team Carlsen studied that, and it was on the cloud, so that information was available.
Yeah, well.
Because usually you make yourself anonymous so that people cannot see it. So someone forgot it then?
Could be.
The problem is you can't check what other people have analysed without allowing your information of what you're analysing out there as well. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
And okay, I mean, this is modern chess for you. I mean, clearly these are some of the top computer moves, and that's why it's been analysed. Maybe we can just do a bit of a dive into why Magnus has been moving his knight around so much. We saw in this position, Simon was saying maybe the white bishop can capture this pawn. Instead, the white knight took, and the white knight now maybe wants to head actually to the edge of the board. Not something we normally recommend, but it would harass this bishop, and this light-squared bishop would have to retreat. This is actually one of Magnus's most important pieces. He cannot let it fall. Bishops in this type of position, as things are about to become open, are very important. That's why Magnus brought his knight back to where it came from. It was only here, 3 moves ago, and now he stopped the white knight from going to this square. That would just end in a trade. If white were to bring his knight to the side of the board, we'd see a trade. I don't think this is going to help Nepomniachtchi too much. And I guess the other idea behind Magnus's knight move, as well as covering this square, is to cover the central square, to stop white pushing in the centre and opening things up while black isn't ready. So very strange. Losing time, Magnus, with this knight, but he has provoked Nepomniachtchi into showing his hand, into kind of revealing his plan. And Jovanka mentioned now, this is the move that was studied by that mysterious anonymous person online. Was it Peter Heine Nielsen, or was it Vladimir Potkin? Whose coach was it that has studied this rook move? It's very natural, actually. Just it's a semi-open line. You can have some targets here for the white rook.
Yeah. I mean, they had an exchange of pawns as well. I'm just wondering if this favoured anyone. So you have the open file for the C rook. Maybe Magnus can try to get something on the B file here. I think whenever you have an exchange of pawns, whenever the structure changes, it's a good idea to take another look at the position and see what the positives and negatives are. So, you know, it seems easier for white to play this, to my eyes, because that knight on C6 could be a bit clumsy. So black should be looking for some counterplay somehow, and I'm just trying to work out where that's going to come from. Maybe rook b8, d5 is a move you always want to try, but I don't know if d5 is maybe just not working in this position here, because you drop the pawn next to it if you push on. So,
Should I tell you what was studied in October 27th?
Yeah,
I can see.
Oh, brilliant.
I can see. So what was studied there is that the rook came to that line, and the main move that they had considered was actually pushing the A pawn 1 square forward just to secure the B4 square, and then white played bishop going to C3 just to support a pawn push, and then so bishop retreats back. I don't know why. Mysterious to me.
This way?
Yep, back to its home square. And
this
then
is really deep.
I know. And then
white
finally, and then white finally pushed the pawn forward in the center, and then that capture was analysed. So what do you think?
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot of analysis.
Do you think this was someone having fun, or do you think this is
they look like serious moves. They look like serious moves to me. I think just the fact that you're analysing this position rather than some crazy King's Gambit means that you're doing it more for work than fun. You know, this is not something you're probably going to do if you're playing like Joe Bloggs in the weekend tournament down in Bournemouth or something. This is World Championships level, I think. So I think this could be serious analysis. Yeah, quite possibly. And just the fact maybe that Jan is now taking his time. Maybe it was from Magnus's team. Let's see. So possibly.
Yeah, I mean, if it was one of Jan Nepomniachtchi's coaches who was analysing this position, looking at this rook move, then maybe he passed on that knowledge, but maybe the conclusion was unclear, because we're already at move 16 now. That's quite deep. Remember, especially because Magnus played only the 5th most popular choice a few turns ago. There's no way that Jan Nepomniachtchi could have gone even further, I think, than the next couple of moves in his analysis. And if it wasn't Magnus Carlsen's team, then I think he'll be ready with ideas such as that bishop retreat you mentioned, Jovanka, rerouting that black light square bishop. That one, for me, that's not even grandmaster move. That's kind of a Silicon Valley move where the top computers would...
He's played Rook C1 as well.
Okay.
So if he plays A5 now...
Instantly.
Is Team Magnus on the cloud, yeah? So this is what we're thinking.
That's a good point, Simon. If black pushes that pawn, for sure it was Magnus's.
It must be Magnus's team. Would he play it quickly? OK, if he sits down and bangs out A5, or would he, like, Hollywood it a little bit? I mean, I guess you've both been in a situation, like, I know I have myself, you prepared a novelty and you're able to get it in, so a new idea on the board, which happens quite rarely, but you know it's a strong idea. But rather than playing it quickly, there is a bit of psychology. So you don't want to show your opponent you've had this prepared. So you kind of sit there, you're really eager to play that move. And they'd say you should sit on your hands when you're a kid, so you don't go rushing around with your hands, but you sit on your hands and you think, you know it's a good move, but you're just like, I'm going to let them think that I've only just worked this out just to get that little mind game. So I don't know if that happens at this level. I mean, is that just me, or do you guys ever have that same kind of slight mind game when you have a new idea?
Yeah, all the time. Actually, there's two different approaches. One of them is the one you mentioned, Simon, where you just play calm, you pretend you don't know what's going on, but secretly you do, and you know a lot more details. The other approach is to scare your opponent, and a lot of top players do this. Nakamura does this, Adiban does this, from my experience. They just bang down the move, and they just hope that their opponents are terrified by their confidence. So two different approaches, I think. And
But we really are now looking for that pawn move from Magnus. If he plays that move, then he's going to be in preparation.
And we know that they've been on the cloud. Wow. They've accidentally made that information public.
That would be a bit of a mistake, though, if they made it public, don't you think? I mean, if you can...
well, the thing is, though, I mean, this position is quite...
It's quite rare.
It's quite rare, right?
Yeah,
so it's not necessarily kind of clear that anyone would know that it was them, and it's only when we get to this position we're like, aha! So that's who it was.
And just out of curiosity as well, I've just checked SESI, which is, of course, this Norwegian supercomputer, which is basically Stockfish, but super-powered with high-level processors, and it does say that that move is by far his best.
Okay.
I mean...
God, this is high-level stuff
I know.
which you expect in the World Championships.
And already, after 16 moves in Game 3, we have a super interesting and tense moment. Will Magnus Carlsen play the pawn to A5?
I'm not sure that would be on my radar, to be honest, because Black's pawn on the A-pawn, if it is isolated, if it does push forward, Black's pieces will be tied down defending it for several moves. So you're basically... Yes, you're taking control of some important squares, but you're also weakening your own pawn. So it's not human instinct necessarily. Of course, Magnus is strong enough to make a decision like that and evaluate it correctly, even if he doesn't know the position. But if he does know the position, then...
And obviously, what is the point with it?
It's just to take... I think it's to stop White pushing his pawns forward and gaining space. Let's maybe do a deeper dive just to check it out one more time, because I think there are two ideas that Magnus might need to find if he wants to hold the balance. Firstly, it is pushing this pawn forward, and as I mentioned, now White does have two pieces attacking this isolated pawn, which can't be held on to by other black pawns, but it does tie down the black pieces. And the idea, I guess, is to control this square. So that means that if White were ever to, for example, retreat a bishop, he could never, ever push his pawn forward. It would simply be captured. And also, if you delay it too long as Black, if you kind of just make a random move on the other side, then maybe White wants to push his pawn to this square, and this would open up another nice diagonal for White's bishop. So maybe it's just a kind of a move to stop the opponent's plans just as much as it is to kind of do anything yourself.
I'm wondering if Black does push A5. I mean, obviously, this is something they may have analysed. If that pawn, as you mentioned, is very weak, do you have time to play something kind of ridiculous? I don't think you do, because of Bishop C8 and Rook B8, but I'd like to play Rook E2 and Queen E1, but that's incredibly slow because you get your probably Bishop C8 is a very good response, but this pawn you've pointed out on A5 is a real weakness, and you can't defend that pawn in a lot of lines. But
that's sneaky, actually. That's clever.
Yeah, obviously here Black has many ways to get counterplay. Bishop G4 being one, Rook B8 being another idea, but you must watch out for that pawn on A5. So maybe it's not a very human move to play pawn to A5, as you said, because you put your black pawn under attack. So I don't know if he'll find that move or not really here.
Yeah, it's not easy. I mean, he's looking up now. And normally that's Magnus Carlsen's kind of remembering face, where he's just trying to recall what he studied before.
And maybe when he recalls it, like, ooh, that was it.
maybe he's just thinking, oh, A5, I've seen that somewhere. What was the evaluation? What did my coach say about that? Yeah, it feels like maybe he's semi-aware that he has discussed this position before, but maybe he doesn't know all of the exact details.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many variations.
So much information that you need to go into.
I mean, I think Magnus, from his reaction, I don't think he remembers every little detail. Yeah. And maybe he doesn't remember the move that he should be playing here, and just now is on his own and is going to maybe make another move.
But okay, if it is like that, he doesn't quite remember, but he goes through the options maybe that he thinks are good options, and then he comes maybe to this pawn move. Would it be like, oh wait, we did study that, we did look at that, that was a good move?
Yeah, I think exactly. Sometimes you just get there by process of elimination, or you kind of reverse engineer your own thinking. And yeah, I mean, Simon's mentioned his memory, his phenomenal memory, Magnus. And of course, there's a huge amount of data to absorb before any World Championship match. You need to cover every single opening pretty much in chess. But it's somewhere in his memory banks. And maybe he's doing a Sherlock Holmes, just going into his mind palace right now. And he's clearly not looking at the board, so he's not really looking, kind of calculating variations. He's just trying to go into recall mode.
Yeah.
Do you think these players like Magnus, I mean, I remember Anish Giri was saying when he prepares for the candidates, obviously another world-class player and tweeter, when he goes into the candidates, he has to go over all the variations of his laptop to maybe get it from long-term memory into short-term memory. Because a lot of these things, they're there, but you might look at them 2 years ago, so can you actually remember the board? Do you think someone like Magnus is capable of doing that? I mean, you're talking of hundreds of thousands of lines, probably, that go very deeply. It's, I guess, getting them to short-term memory, looking at them is something quite important, you know.
Yeah, yesterday we talked here in the studio about chess being a bit like, chess matches like this being a bit like exams, right? Even if you know everything, you need to revise just beforehand, just to turn it into that short-term memory. And yeah, I mean, I've been there when Magnus has been just kind of clicking through some buttons, and just he can absorb it very quickly, or he can recall very quickly, but if it has been 2 years since he looked at it, then it's not easy for anyone.
Not 2 years. October 27th.
That wasn't him. That wasn't him.
If it was someone, it was his coach.
Yes. And yeah, one thing I was going to say is that you do have to be very careful when you're trying to absorb the chess variations. I mean, the best tip that I can give is for everyone just to put it up on a board. Put up the position that you want to memorize on a board.
Physical board,
and then you can kind of get a feeling for how the position is, maybe the sense of danger of the human moves as well. Be very careful with just opening up a chess program and just going bum, bum, bum with the space, and then you're like, la, 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 I got that one. In reality, there's been no absorption whatsoever because you haven't put the hard graft into it. It's been the computer that's generated these moves, and you've just gone, yes.
Oh, and look at Magnus.
I totally agree with you there. I mean, I know so many players who are, I don't know, let's say 1400 strength, and they rely on their computer as much as they can. I mean, one story, I was playing in Vienna with another grandmaster, and we had someone joining us who was 1400 strength. And after the games, we'd go and have a glass of wine, maybe look at his game. But he'd prefer to look at the game on his phone with the weak frit. So we'd suggest a move, and he'd be like, no, the computer says minus 0.2 to that, you're wrong, you're wrong. And it's like, oh dear. And after about an hour of that, it's like, let's just go and have a wine somewhere else, shall we? So it's like, none of that, please. So it's really easy to get lazy. You just look at the phone, but you're not really understanding why these moves are being suggested, and you have to understand the reasoning behind the moves, and that's something that computers just can't tell you. They can't tell you the why. So it's so important to understand why is Rook C1, for example, a good move, or something else.
Yeah, well, Magnus, he is still in deep thought. Will he make this A5 move with his pawn? We're going to head down to Tanya, standing with a lot of great chess players. What do you think, Tanya? Will Magnus make this A5 move?
We're going to find out, but the one thing that's very clear is that this is going to be a long strategic fight, quite different from the action that we've been witnessing in Game 1 and Game 2. And for more on that, for more insights about the kind of chess we're seeing today going into the rest day tomorrow, I've got with me Grandmaster Maurice Ashley. Maurice, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Tanya.
Maurice, first impressions about the position that we have on the board right now.
I love it. It's playing into the same kind of strategy, actually, that they've had so far. Atypical positions. You don't see this kind of Ruy Lopez every single day, this plan of c4, taking on c4, knight c4. The pawn structure is atypical. That is what we're seeing, and that puts Magnus sort of on his back foot because he's not able to just play relaxed moves, let me do this, let me do that, I know all this. No, he's got to think. It's a unique position that Jan has prepared. I like this kind of chess.
I have to ask you now, Maurice, this is Magnus's second black. He's had 2 blacks. He's gone for the marshal. He's made it clear. Anti-marshal by Jan here. First he played h3, then he's gone for a4. Now, one of the players is, of course, known for anti-marshal, where he won a big game, Peter Lecko. Peter beat Kramnik in a very, very important game in the marshal. Magnus giving it away that his main prep against e4 is the marshal. What do you think about that?
Well, Magnus is Magnus. He can do what he wants. He doesn't care about Peter Lecko. He doesn't care about Vladimir Kramnik, Fischer Kasparov. His name is Magnus Carlsen because he knows everything. He is comfortable playing any position. We've seen him play openings. The dragon, he'll just toss it out there because he feels like it. His understanding is so deep that any position he's in, he feels like he's like a cat. You throw him out a window, he's going to flip and land on his feet.
Awesome. Now, Maurice, of course, you're a grandmaster, you're a pro commentator, and I have to ask you, I worked with you in St. Louis as well. You have a great understanding of players, their style. The last 2 games that we've seen, what's the message that the challenger has sent across to the world champion?
What I'm hearing, not only in the games, but from Jan himself, is that I'm not afraid. I don't care that this is a world championship. I'm playing against Magnus Carlsen. That's the point of this exercise. So he somehow has blocked out all the noise, all the distractions, any question where we try to pull it out. Are you afraid? Are you nervous? Are you uncomfortable now? He's like, I'm playing chess. Nerves are gone. That's done. We're making moves. And I think that Magnus now knows that he faces a relaxed opponent, a determined opponent, and that all Jan and his entire team is thinking about is crushing him. That's all they want. They want to win this match. And Jan, right now, looks like Joe Cool. Magnus knows he's got a fight on his hands.
Oh, well, there is only one thing to fight for in this event, and that is the World Championship title. Jan Nepomniachtchi making his intention very clear, playing fearless chess. Another big battle ahead of us. Back to you guys in the studio.
Thanks so much, Tanya. Oh, it's so interesting to hear from the people who is close to the action in Dubai right now. Magnus Carlsen in a deep think right now, thinking for 12 minutes on this next move. We are only in move 16. Okay, he's making a move. Will the move come out? What do you think, David? How long will Magnus Carlsen stay on this move?
Yeah, this is a tricky one to call. Magnus now, he's been thinking for 12 minutes. Just by his change in body language, it shows he's not quite ready to make a decision yet. And it is a big, big moment, because if he doesn't find this pawn move, maybe White will use that square for his own pawn or use it for his own knight. And somehow it feels like Black is going to struggle for space, struggle for activity, struggle for control if he doesn't find it. So for me, of course, I would be spending 30, 40 minutes, but I do have a feeling Magnus will also invest quite a lot of time. I wouldn't be surprised if he thinks for another 10 minutes or so before either pushing that pawn or maybe sliding his rook across. And
oh, here comes.
Okay. Of course he's played it.
He has played it. Magnus Carlsen has played his pawn to e5. That means he's in preparation and is following some fantastic calculations that he's probably made with his team.
Yep, that's what we're speculating. Yep. Yes, he's following the analysis that I have here on my computer that was studied in October 27th. So, okay, that was last month. And we did see that Magnus went into his memory palace. And really, and even now, he's still just trying to remember all the fine details. Because if you remember the line that we showed, it did get pretty critical because White was allowed to just open up the center.
Yeah, and it's unclear yet whether Magnus is still kind of following something he's looked at before, or whether he just got there by process of elimination, or because he's just, I mean, the best player in the world. He's finding these, once you give them kind of, not necessarily only moves, but once you give them a narrow path, they normally find those best moves. But either way, that's unclear, but I think it will become clear over the next few moves.
Yeah, I think there was also a danger in that last position that White could have moved the knight to a5. So if you played like bishop c8, something like this, that knight could have come there, which actually, the more I looked at it, is looking quite scary. So maybe a5 is one of those moves you kind of have to find. Otherwise, you're just worse. And when you're the world champion, you'll probably find such moves. I mean, it's a very tense position, and the thing I kind of like about these positions is that you don't have you don't have any pieces exchanged, so all the pieces remain on the board, and at some point the position could just burst into flames. So there's loads of tension, loads of stuff going on, but one moment it just comes open and all the tactics start to occur. So it's like that slow build up and that big sort of crescendo, which we're going to see at some point, I'd imagine, in this position.
Yeah. And we have a question from Kuma Racinos on Twitter. And there we saw that Magnus actually had a very, very long think as he went into the tank. And what is the kind of etiquette for Jan Nepomniachtchi? Would he be allowed to get up and see the board from his opponent's side of?
Yeah. As far as I know, you're allowed to do that. I mean, you don't want to be standing right next to their shoulder, kind of in their personal space, disturbing them. But I occasionally do that. I just get up, and as long as my opponent isn't disturbed, then I can watch from afar, check it out, and maybe see what the opponent's plans might be.
One of the most annoying things, I don't know about you guys, but you have your opponent and they come and literally stand behind your shoulder.
Yeah.
So I was told this by one coach that you should go around and look at the position from your opponent's point of view. So you get to see their point of view on the position. But then if your opponent literally is like his head over your shoulder, just feel
the breath on
breathing down your
breath.
neck.
You can just feel their presence, and it's like, no, just go away. And I know a lot of players do this on purpose. You know, these guys don't. But if you're playing in a tournament, then they certainly use some quite outlandish tactics to try and put you off. You know.
And of course, they wouldn't be. So none of the players are here right now. They wouldn't be allowed to sit in the other one's chair, right?
Oh, that'd be brilliant. I would love that.
That's
you know,
a new
just
level
get away. Yeah.
The ultimate troll.
Yeah, that would be brilliant. I'd love to see that in the World Championships. Just go around and sit in their chair.
Yeah. And then the other
just
one
swivel
would
around,
come
maybe.
out.
Just enjoy yourself. Just, you know. Right,
yeah.
Just admit it. Like, sometimes your position sucks. You just want to sit on the
side. Just enjoy their view for a second or two.
Yeah. Well, it is a tense moment in the game. Magnus Carlsen has moved his pawn to a5. What will Jan Nepomniachtchi do in return? He's not by the board right now. And as we mentioned yesterday, we do like to see those faces. So let's take a look at your selfies. Thank you so much to everyone for watching and for sharing your selfies using the hashtag C24Live. Jan Nepomniachtchi just came back to the board. Will we see a quick move from him now, David?
I think a quick move is very likely from Jan Nepomniachtchi. Maybe not over the next 30 seconds or minute, but this doesn't seem like the kind of position where you invest 20, 30 minutes. For me, there's only one clear plan now for white, and that would be initiated by moving the white dark squared bishop. And what do you guys think? I only see one sensible option here.
Yeah, it's why you put that bishop on that square to begin with. I mean, why else?
Has two ideas as well. If you go bishop c3, it has this idea of going queen d2 and just winning that pawn, but it has the idea of opening the center, which we talked about. At some point, something will come to life, and you can try to push with d4, as I think you mentioned, David, and showing there on the board. So bishop c3 looks very obvious here. I find a lot of these positions when you're playing chess, and again, this is something that people don't really consider. It's not just who's better, even if it's by 0.1, it's whose position is easier to play. Even at this level, which is incredibly, obviously, the best level you can get, if your position is slightly easier to play, your moves are more natural, you have easier plans, then that gives you some kind of advantage. And it seems to me that White's position is it's more natural to play. I don't know if, obviously, David, you play at the highest levels, if that's something you take into account, and Jovanka yourself as well when you play.
Yeah. All the time. For me, it's the number one consideration when choosing openings, because objectively everything's pretty much equal these days. There's no good or bad openings. Is he about to play this move? But yeah, the key thing is just choosing positions that the plans are straightforward, and it looks like he has indeed brought his bishop to this square as we predicted. There's two ideas: pushing a pawn forward, exploding things open. This would lead to complete chaos if he plays it next. Or, as Simon mentioned, just sliding the queen forward one square. For example, if black moves the bishop, sliding it forward and targeting this pawn. You've got to time it correctly. There might be consequences to each decision, but either way, I think Simon's on point there. This was part of the plan. It was a straightforward move, and that's why Nepomniachtchi may be feeling slightly more comfortable right now, just because there was no other sensible way forward.
And yeah, I'm just checking with Ceci as well. And the top move is for the light squared bishop to go back to its home square and reroute itself. So we might see.
This is such a hard move to find, though. Bishop c8, I think, right? I mean,
but I think
unless you've looked at it with a computer.
Yeah. But I do think that Magnus
is going to find
a kind of move like that, because I've seen him do this type of thing before. And it is quite common in these kind of positions. Your bishop is blunted, is looking at a wall, so move it to a better diagonal.
Yeah, it's on a good diagonal, but that diagonal is completely blocked, as you mentioned. And it is slightly typical, but not in this exact position where there have been open lines, where there's open diagonals.
Okay.
Personally, I think it would take me a long time to come up with this move. We should also explain the reasons behind it, this retreat. Firstly, because you might want to bring it to this square and create an annoying pin against the white knight and against the white queen. But if white, for example, stops that move, if white pushes a pawn forward, controlling the square the bishop wants to move, then you can bring it to the center and challenge against white's light squared bishop. And this is the Spanish opening, the Roy Lopez. The whole kind of heart and soul of the opening is this white light squared bishop. It was Bobby Fischer's best kind of favorite piece as well. And if you can kind of neutralize the light squared bishops, you might neutralize white's advantage. So yeah, a very logical move once you stumble across it, but not easy to have on the radar. It's not kind of human instinct. Okay, Magnus frowning slightly there.
Yeah.
And again, I think maybe it comes back that white has the slight easier position to play. I mean, bishop c8, I'm sure he will find it, but it's going to take, he's going to spend a lot of time finding such moves as this. And Jan, well, he always seems quite confident, Jan, doesn't he? He's very hard to tell from his body language, because he's always getting up when he plays a move, and he just has that extreme confidence about him. But
sorry, Simon, Tanya is down in Dubai with an interesting report. What's going on in Dubai, Tanya?
Kaja, now we heard it from Grandmaster Maurice Ashley that both players playing atypical positions like we've been seeing them in Game 1 and Game 2. Quite unique structures on the board, pawn trades. I've got with me a martial expert, Grandmaster Hans Niemann, joining us to take us through what exactly happened. Now, Hans, in this position in front of us is where Magnus went into his first big think. Jan played knight d2, and then we saw Magnus hold his head, take a moment, and pause. What happened here?
So, you know, some people might think that this think actually means he doesn't know the position, but I can assure you Magnus has looked at this position and knows exactly what he's doing. It's a common thing that a lot of top players do is when he's making a psychological decision here. He's choosing essentially to go for the main line, which is knight to a5, and after bishop a2, c5, knight f1, bishop c8. This is a very extremely theoretical line, something I've played myself. And he's probably thinking, okay, if Jan is going for this specifically, he's got some ideas, and maybe this is somewhere where Magnus doesn't feel comfortable going straight into Jan's preparation. So then he's thinking to himself, okay, how can I deviate in this position without sort of giving Jan too much of an advantage? So in this here,
he's probably got maybe 2 or 3 other alternative moves that he can play to sort of surprise Jan. And I think the surprise factor is extremely important. So he played Rook E8, a move that is definitely not the main move. But it's the goal of this move is to sort of say to Jan, okay, you're not going to get the knight a5 main line. Now show me what you've got. So this was a really interesting theoretical moment, something I'm a specialist. I played a lot of games with the black pieces here. And I can assure you that if I know a lot about this, Magnus knows 10 times more. So although he might be thinking, and you might think, oh, maybe he's got, maybe he's worried, maybe he's unsure, but I can assure you that he is thinking extremely psychologically and how he's going to make his next decisions.
I'm looking at Magnus behind us on the big screen right now. And Hans, I have to say that he doesn't look very comfortable with what's going on. So what do you think is, what is he thinking right now?
So I think he maybe is regretting possibly not going for knight a5 because knight a5 is sort of the direct equalizer. It's not completely equal, but if from my analysis and from general top-level analysis, if you take it deep enough, it's equalizing. So perhaps he's regretting that specific decision, and perhaps he's been just annoyed that Jan has played so well. And as you see in the position currently, this a5 pawn could be a bit long-term weakness, and I think that he's a little bit uncomfortable. And one thing that Jan is really impressed with is when I look at his face and when I see how he's sitting, I can just sort of tell that he's comfortable. Like sitting, he's at the World Chess Championships. I expected, honestly, it's not easy to sit down and sit at that chair like you own it and like you are meant to be here. So I think psychologically, Magnus is realizing that Jan is here to play, Jan is here to fight, and this is not going to be easy.
Well, it is the World Championship match, so it's not meant to be easy, and definitely big fights have been happening and will continue to happen. Hans, what do you think about Magnus showing his main prep against e4, going for e5, and always trying to get the marshal?
Well, yeah, it's definitely sort of in tune with the theme of the last match against Caruana, as we saw with e4, c5, and the Sveshnikov being the main sort of battleground. So essentially, I think Magnus is saying, okay, I'm willing to fight in the marshal, I'm willing to prove my preparation, and I'm willing to make this the general fighting ground. So I think that's really interesting. It's an opening I like a lot myself, and I've played a lot myself, and I think it's great. And I think it's going to create a lot of dynamic play, creating winning chances for both sides. So I think this is really interesting for the battleground, and I honestly was surprising to me, but I think based on these first 2 games, the rest of the match could just be, Jan trying to find ideas in the marshal.
Very interesting, and I can see on our live board, Magnus has gone for the idea of bishop c8, rerouting that bishop. What's your take on the current position?
So I do like this idea with bishop c8, bishop b6, sort of the main dynamic of this position, even the position we have on the board, is that the bishop on b7 just isn't great. Because the bishop on b7, the entire sort of premise of this position is broken down into whether you can play d5 and the structure and the premise under which d5 is played. Now, with this d3 and a4 setup, it's really sort of targeted to prevent d5, which meaning the bishop must reroute. So I think with this rerouting the bishop, I think he's slightly worse, but on a objective perspective, he should be able to equalize and play, a dynamic game, although Jan definitely has an advantage now.
Thank you so much, Hans, for that. There we have it, Grandmaster Hans Niemann with his take on the current position.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tanya and Hans, and super interesting. Hans saying that definitely there is an advantage for Jan Nepomniachtchi right now.
It does look that way if we trust the computers, and this type of position, I'm quite inclined to trust them because it's about to open up. It's about to get quite forcing and dynamic. And Magnus Carlsen, he did find the move, we should mention, while they were having the chat there. Black did find the move that we were recommending. Quite an important move, rerouting that bishop. But if Jan Nepomniachtchi plays the most principled reply, I think he will, then Magnus still has some hard work to do. A lot of defense ahead. What do we think, guys? Is White going to push his central pawn forward, push the d pawn, explode things open? Feels like this might be the moment.
I think if he does play it, it's a good sign for Jan because he is an aggressive player. And we want to kind of see that aggression at some point. He's got to play a move like that if he wants to win this match. He can't sit there and play long games, which is something Magnus specialises in. So I think d4 would be a very positive sign for his team if he played it now, because it's a very positive move. You're just trying to open it up. And, of course, Jovanka, you have some more information on this position as well.
That pawn push was the move that was studied in October. Now, I have an interesting story here because on October the 20th, someone looked at pawn takes pawn. And they analysed after pawn takes pawn, they analysed, they actually just stopped there, so we don't have any more moves. But on October 27th, they turned around and looked at knight takes pawn as well.
So this is on the cloud database?
This is definitely in the, this is in the cloud database where you can look at what people have been studying.
And can we know how far they studied, maybe? Because this looks like quite a forcing variation. After knight takes pawn, there's about to be trades of pieces for the first time in the game.
Yep, it does continue. Okay, so it continued after everything got swapped off. And there was a bit of indecision, you know, bishop takes pawn or queen takes pawn. Both lines were looked at. And in the end, queen takes pawn was kind of looked at a little bit more.
Looks like the most attacking look at these bishops, potentially. Still need some help to get pieces out the way for them, but scary pieces.
Yeah,
heading towards the black king.
And then the line continues. Do you want me to go on?
Yeah, keep going.
The light square bishop developed to the e6 square. That's right, David. And then they looked at a very subtle move, actually stepping back with the queen 1 square.
Okay, interesting.
Okay.
Could it be Nepomniachtchi that has studied this? Or
It could be because the line ends here. And then here I can see that...
Knight d7?
Hang on a second. In November 26th, that was a few days ago, it was revisited.
Okay, wow.
Okay.
What?
Crazy. November 26th?
Yeah, November 26th.
That was the day of the first game of this match. So it feels like it must be Team Nepomniachtchi, because maybe they realised he wasn't getting anywhere with the way he played in Game 1.
Right.
So maybe they were trying to find a different way to play in Game 3, his next...
But wouldn't Jan be playing quickly? He strikes me as the kind of character who are talking about these guys that might try to hide their analysis or they try to scare their opponent. I think if Jan had prepared this a couple of days ago, he'd be banging out the moves with pure confidence, you know. But it is very strange timing that you've got this here. A couple of days ago, this position's been fine.
Maybe Magnus before the game was because he didn't know there would be an h3 anti-marshal and he was expecting this. So maybe he's kind of...
Oh, in those 7 minutes that he spent in the car.
Yes.
I was going to say.
Maybe someone just logged on while they were in the car.
Oh, wow. This is, you called it, David, modern chess.
Oh, it's crazy.
It's on the screen right here.
It's like a spy thriller. It's like,
it is.
Who did this? Who did that? Who was it?
But we never get this, actually. We never get this type of information. Usually, you know, we're always second-guessing and we kind of think, oh, what kind of novelties do the seconds cooked up in their kitchen? And here, someone, by going on the cloud engine and not analysing privately, has actually given us a real look into what they've studied. And I think the dates are making sure that I think it is going to be someone from Team Magnus or Team Nepo.
Do you think the team member who accidentally made that information public, do you think the team member will get in trouble? For example, if Magnus, if it was one of his team, one of his coaches, if he finds out that it was out there on the cloud, maybe he'll just be like, what were you doing? Why didn't you click off that cloud button?
Strange.
It's such high stakes. I mean, if this game goes in one side's favour, then the losing side might well blame their team for maybe not being so thorough.
It's amazing how chess preparation has moved on. I mean, like I'm in my 40s, and when I was learning chess, you just didn't use computers, and now you're not just using computers, you're using cloud computers, and you know, what's it going to be next? And you've got all this information you can save online, supercomputers. It's another level of analysis now. And d4, he's played it. And I have to say, I'd be a little bit nervous if I was in Team Magnus now, because he could be a little bit worse. The position is opening up, but it's also, I feel, the kind of position that Jan enjoys playing. He likes having initiative, most of the pieces on the board. Those bishops you pointed out, David, are looking incredibly strong, both striking down towards Black's king. And you've got to be careful here with Black. You've got to be really careful.
I mean, if you compare the black bishops to the white bishops, right? The white bishops, now that things are about to become open, they're staring down at the black king. Both black bishops back on their starting squares, despite having both moved a couple of times. So definitely the stakes are higher for Magnus.
And do you think, you guys probably know Magnus more than me, his body language? Do you think is there any way you can tell from his body language anything at all, would you say? he doesn't look happy to me, but I guess it could just be his normal concentrating look.
I have a feeling he still vaguely knows what's going on here. And
right.
I mean, normally he's quite expressive with his face. Okay, there he kind of shrugged and kind of grimaced, but yeah, in general, I think maybe he's about to make a move.
And he's
taken with the pawn.
He's taken with the pawn.
Okay.
You know, Ceci and the computer were really indecisive. You know, pawn takes pawn, knight takes pawn.
They should result in the same position.
Exactly.
Okay. Are we still?
Still following there. Prep 2 days ago. It's crazy. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
We're still in there.
Move 19. Yep.
Wow. Imagine if we end up on move 25, 30, and the position's still analysed.
So this was literally, so why this is so amazing is that this was analysed on a cloud server 2 days ago for the first time ever. And now we're seeing it, and we're not sure who put it up, but they maybe could have put it up as private, but they've put it up as public. So whoever did that, your job's on the line, son. So just so they're probably more worried than anyone else. They're like, why didn't I press the private button? But it's fascinating.
Yeah, and isn't it fascinating as well that it's hard to tell if it is Team Carlsen or Team Nepomniachtchi?
Or some random
If you are
guy.
out there and you studied this and you're not in their team, please tweet us. We want to get to know you. We want to call you.
Yeah. Hashtag C24 live. Yeah.
If you are the culprit, then get on the show. So, yeah.
And we're going to have you call out the lottery numbers today as well.
Yes.
And there we go. Nepomniachtchi makes a bit of a face and then takes back the pawn with his knight.
Okay.
So Nepomniachtchi, again, it looks like, just having played him several times, he made a bit of a face, but it feels like he's trying to control his emotions and not try to give too much away. So
this is still following everything.
It is.
Queen takes, then it was Bishop E6.
Yeah, I mean, both
Following
moves
what we showed
were
earlier.
looked at.
Yeah, and he will take with the Queen, surely.
It's the most natural move, right?
Yeah, and now Bishop E6, and you might as well just tell us the whole game, Jovanka. I'll just go. I'll go and have a cup of coffee. You can tell us how it ends.
So maybe then, one of them studied this. We think that is quite clear.
For sure.
The other one has seen this, that has been open out there, and has also studied it, but privately.
Okay, he just adjusted a piece.
Shadoobed. Yes.
Shadoobed. I adjust. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I think we will find out for sure over the next. I've said this before, but we'll find out now over the next couple of moves who knows the position better. And I do think Nepomniachtchi, just judging by his body language, maybe it's him.
Yeah,
Magnus.
very confident.
Yeah.
Magnus. I mean, just visually, I don't know what you think, Jovanka and David, but visually, it looks nice white without going deep analysis. I mean, the pawn on A5 is weak. The bishops look nice. White is very nicely centralised. I mean, OK, it's not a concrete assessment, but visually, if you had to glance on it, would you surely take white here?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Simple answer there. As we mentioned, the two bishops, they have the potential to be strong. The queen, I mean, if you compare all the pieces, the queen is better than the black queen. The two bishops are better than their counterparts, and the white knight, you could argue it's right now more active than black's knight. And the rooks, maybe better positioned for things to open up. If white can kind of pummel through and just break with another pawn push, black will be in trouble.
Here we go, it's Bishop E6, quickly. Has he played it? He played that quickly.
He played that, yeah. Wow.
Oh, I'd love to hear the press conference afterwards, just to know.
I hope they ask.
What's going on.
If this is the case, one team has studied this openly, forgot to press private button. The other team has seen this and is also in that preparation. How big of a scandal would that be for the team forgetting to put this private?
Definitely wouldn't be ideal. I mean, in public, Magnus or whoever it is will say, "Oh, it's nothing, it's fine." But then in private, they will be having words because if it's happened in this variation, it might have happened in countless other openings.
Oh wow!
Yeah. Because you had this scandal. Obviously, a couple of years ago, well, not more than a couple of years ago, but when Fabiano was playing against Magnus at the World Championships, and they released this video showing Fabiano's computer, and it was showing a very deep position on the computer and showing his preparation. They showed this in a video on YouTube, so someone had literally let his preparation just been shown on a public domain. And
Petrov all over it, right?
Yeah, it didn't really make it very subtle. Like Fabi's preparation for the World Championships, Petrov variation or something like that. And it's like, so if Magnus's team were looking at that, it's like, wow. So these kind of mistakes, you have to be a bit crafty or just careful, don't you? I think at the moment. So
yeah. And the thing is, that was a complete accident. It was part of a bigger shot. They were just showing the team's faces, and then it was just at one corner. Someone had zoomed in, screenshotted, and they found out that information. And it wasn't a bluff. That was actually his opening. So that was.
So, but then I think they claimed it was a bluff. So then you've got to think, were they double bluffing? So it's like, did they put that information out? They're never going to play the Petrov. They're just throwing it out there. So, or is it a triple bluff? So it's like, and of course he did. He played the Petrov in nearly every game. So it was just a mistake. So
there was talk as well in 2016 when Magnus played Karyakin of Magnus hiring someone specially to look after the cybersecurity to make sure there were no hacks, make sure nobody could find out that information, make sure everything was private. And I'm sure both sides as well, they'll be very, very aware of keeping things under lock and key.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Nepomniachtchi thinking. We actually showed this position a few minutes ago, and we thought that White's queen could just step back one square to d3, and that might be the most accurate move. That's not obvious.
That's really not obvious. I don't understand this queen d3 move.
I think,
yeah, sorry, David. I was just thinking it looks like it's going to get hit by a knight. What would be the reason for White to draw the queen back one square?
I think maybe two reasons for it. As you mentioned, Simon, it's very mysterious right now, this queen move. If he finds it, I'll be amazed. Or I'll be very impressed by his preparation. But right now, I'm trying to work out whether White can actually grab this pawn on the side of the board. And I think the answer is maybe not, because after a move such as this one, pushing the pawn forward, attacking the queen, Black will have some counterplay, and suddenly the queen's eye line is opened up towards this White knight. And even if White doesn't lose any material here, the queen is forced back to a bad square just to protect her knight. And suddenly there will be trades. And for example, this central pawn will drop to the Black knight. I think Black could just take it immediately. Also, this pawn will drop at some point. So I don't think White can capture this pawn on the side of the board yet. And maybe if you drop back the queen, maybe you're threatening this. If Black just kind of does nothing, just a random move, then maybe you can get away with taking this pawn at some point. You also maybe indirectly defend your bishop. You do step out of the eye line of Black's pawn. There won't be any tempo gaining or time gaining threats against the White queen. So it's very, very deep. I doubt I'd find this move, to be honest. I doubt I'd play it. I would be very tempted to be looking at direct options or maybe just securing some breathing space for the White king later on.
I would have thought around here this would be a very good indication of their preparation. I mean, queen d3, it doesn't look like a human move to me. I mean, obviously you point out it has great sense to get out of the move c5, and also at this level they can find moves like this, but there are a lot of other very natural moves here as well.
Yeah. Also, this would encourage Black to just retreat the knight. I think you mentioned this idea earlier, Simon, of bringing the knight forward and starting to hit the White queen. So it's not entirely clear. It's actually safer on this square.
But I can tell you the move that was analysed after the queen dropped back to d3 is actually not retreating the knight. Because that looks very natural. It's actually to blast open the centre already with pawn pushing to d5, and so the whole idea is, again, it's a pawn sacrifice, which really fits in with Magnus's whole strategy. It appears from games 1 and 2, sacrifice a pawn, get initiative. So bishop takes knight was the main line, and after queen takes bishop, pawn takes pawn, the bishop comes and attacks the queen, and the analysis has just stopped there.
Okay, so this is finally the end of the line.
Yeah. Wow.
That's good. I mean, this actual kind of sacrifice reminds me of game 1. Where Magnus will get the two bishops, he's a pawn down, but he has clear compensation with space and the bishops. So this is their strategy. Just lose the pawn, get the two bishops, and you're happy. So
Magnus, if we look back in game 1, he sacrificed a pawn. Game 2 yesterday, he sacrificed a pawn. Maybe he'll go for this and sacrifice another pawn, third time in a row.
Yeah. So let's see. So, well, I mean, I don't think queen d3 will be played. Is this? Well, we could do a prediction here, but I don't know about this queen d3. Maybe later on. But what else do you play here?
What else? That's the big question. Do you throw pawns forward at the risk of opening up your king? It doesn't feel like you're ready for that.
No.
It feels like it could backfire. I'd love
to play this f4 move. It's a very attractive move, but this move Jovanka mentioned, d5, at some point just seems like a great way. And then the White king just weakens, so it doesn't seem to work. But I'd love to try to attack here of white. Surprise, surprise. You know, so.
Well, on that subject, I can just see that everyone, you know, now upon seeing this game has gone crazy and is actually checking out what white should be playing. Yeah. And there's a whole load of moves that people are looking at, and they're looking at attacking, like Simon says. There's someone who's suggesting actually doing a rover, which is when the rook lifts up the board then swings across to attack the king. And so someone is looking at moving up the rook to the 3rd rank and getting ready for an attack there. Other people have been looking at just relocating the rooks that's sitting on the C1 square and moving it to the D1 square. Other people are looking at actually just retreating the light squared bishop. So I can just see now there are 21 moves.
So is this basically, as we've been commentating, people are sort of realising that it's on the cloud. They're going on the cloud, they're putting their own moves in.
They're just going onto a database and they're just, you know, consciously or unconsciously, they might have this button which says, let's check. And if you have that let's check function on, well, it's going on the cloud and it's checking up it against the analysis. And, well, here we go.
Now it's hard to tell whether it's one of the 2 players' seconds or whether it's just some random viewer.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Did the random viewer admit to it yet? Do we have...
well, you know, we have Mr. Hot Tub on Twitter said, yeah, it was me. Wink, wink.
Confessed.
Mr. Hot Tub. Is that his name, Mr. Hot Tub?
Mr. Hot Tub, yeah.
Okay.
On his birth certificate, that's his name.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Just call me the Hot Tub, baby. So, I really like this rook e3. I mean, I think it's a bit early, but this is just the kind of move that if you had time to get the rook to g3, you'd very much like to play with those bishops. You kind of need to have, when you're attacking like this, well, you're not really attacking, but in order to start an attack, you need to get as much ammunition around towards your opponent's king. It's all about timing, as you discussed. So swinging the rook over, the rover, rook over. That's the one. I call it the rook swinger. The
rook lift.
The rook lifter. It's for one of these moves. I mean, it seems like a nice idea, but maybe it's too slow. Rook to g3, at least would have a very nasty threat behind it.
Yeah. So in the current position, that's very tempting, but it does take 1-2 moves. And
a lot of moves.
Maybe Magnus would be able to break out in the centre, as we showed.
Definitely.
There would be some big consequences here. So, critical moment. Actually, when I commentated with Magnus on the candidates tournament, he loved these rook lifts. Every position, he was just suggesting these rook swings, these rovers. So, if he studied this before, Magnus, for sure, this would have been on his radar for his opponent, and he would have been checking out what to do there.
I mean,
it's one of his favourite manoeuvres.
I mean, is there any way, I guess, white can do something like knight d2 and just try to take the sting out to d5?
If we see a trade, again, you attack this pawn.
Yeah.
Isolated pawn.
My idea is to try to meet d5 seems to be like a key idea that Black's got in these positions. If Black can play d5, Black's freeing the position up, and I want to try to meet this move with e5, you know, in most structures, if I can. I mean, again, you've got c5 moves, so it gets incredibly complicated. And I don't really like moving my pieces backwards, but it's an idea, I suppose. But bit passive.
Yeah, it's not clear who this favours, actually, because Black does have 2 very strong pawns now, and even if Black's forced to retreat as well, suddenly there's threats in the position of Black marching forward.
Talking about backward moves, I do also have to point out another suggestion that was made by Ceci, the computer that follows Magnus's games. And so top choice is actually retreating the queen. Second choice, and this one, you know, if Nepomniachtchi plays this move, we know that it's him who's been studying this.
So this one?
Is actually, no, one step further.
What? Okay.
Bishop d1. Oh, well, if he plays
what
bishop...
is that?
If he plays bishop d1, then...
Why is that so strange?
I mean, you never see a retreating move like that. Also, you were taught never to disconnect your rooks. Rooks are best when they're connected. I mean, also, what is the bishop doing here? It looks like it's hitting thin air.
I still don't understand it. It's
just weird, isn't it?
It's just weird.
Right,
so that is simply one of those supercomputer moves.
It's very
inhuman.
Exactly.
Nonsense.
And sometimes computers just don't understand the position. Like, for instance, if you'd put game 1 that Magnus and Nepomniachtchi played against each other, if you put the position that they got in the middle game, the computers didn't really know what to do. They would say, yeah, you know, white is better, but then we just shuffle. Nothing, no plans, no nothing. And it's just weird.
Yeah, that's the big problem I found from studying with computers. Sometimes 6 different moves will lead to an equal position. They'll say everything is 0.0, but of course 4 of those moves make sense to a human, 2 of them absolutely no logic behind it, but it doesn't lose or it doesn't worsen the position.
Okay.
So that looks like the type of move which doesn't worsen the position, but probably doesn't improve it either. And for a human, you always want to improve things, or you always want a kind of logical plan. You don't want just a bunch of random kind of lucky dip type of moves. So
Jan's definitely not going to move his bishop back to the back rank.
I think if he does that, I will wear that Teletubby uniform.
Okay, yes.
Maybe. Oh my God, what did I just say?
On that note, guys.
Oh no.
On that note.
Did I just say that?
I think I'm going to have to launch the Guess the Move because I want to see Simon in a Teletubby costume. And it's up to you guys, the viewers at home now, to choose the move. What is Jan Nepomniachtchi going to play?
If he plays Bishop D1. But okay.
It's that moment, guys. Come on, let's do it.
Awesome stuff, David. You launched Guess the Move in this position, and that means the viewers, they now have to guess the move on Twitter.
Yep, and we don't know how much time you have, remember, so message us using the hashtag C24Live. What move do you think Jan Nepomniachtchi is going to play? He's already been spending 12 minutes. He could make a move in the next minute or two. He could make a move in the next 20 minutes. But message us your thoughts. Is he going to play a move that Simon thinks he won't? Is Simon going to end up in a Teletubby costume?
Oh, I hope so.
Or is Nepomniachtchi going to play maybe a more sensible move?
Wow,
Let us know.
There's going to be a prize.
There is going to be a prize, and it is 1 year's membership of G-Chess, which is the first ever website where you can just put up a chess position on a chess database, and it can search through those chess databases, chess articles, Chessable short and sweet, and also YouTube. So it's an awesome prize. It's a tremendous resource at your fingertips. So please tweet your answer using the hashtag C24Live, and I will be picking the winner, which is always fun.
Yes. All right. Well, you still have time. Clock is still ticking for Jan Nepomniachtchi. How many options, realistically, does he have here?
That's the thing. Many options.
Okay.
We've suggested maybe 3 or 4 options. We showed them on the board a moment ago. I think the bishop option is the least likely of those. But, for example, stepping the white queen back 1 square, pushing some of the white pawns, lifting up the white rook. Which one appeals to you at home? Let us know.
Yeah, and remember, bishop D1 means Simon gets to wear the Tinky Winky.
I'm sure the bet was that if bishop D1's played, okay, I'll go Tinky Winky, whatever. La la, just give me the whole bloody lot. I don't care. But if bishop D1's not played, I'm sure David said he has to wear a la la outfit. Wasn't that the bet? I'm sure there's a winning side to the bet.
Imagine he thinks so.
Like, no?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Oh, dear.
Are you sweating yet? Are you sweating?
I am. I'm getting a little
Don't worry.
bit hot
I mean,
under the collar.
I think you've made a pretty safe bet.
I'm just going to wait, though, with, Oh, dear.
All right, well, you guys, 14 minutes now before Jan Nepomniachtchi in this move, so you still have time to make your predictions. Okay, his hand was raised.
And
still thinking.
He's not sure himself. He's undecided. And actually, I think this is the longest he's spent at the board thinking since the beginning of Game 1, since very early in Game 1. So, yeah, right now it's unclear. Nepomniachtchi, if he retreats his queen, we're going to head down towards that position we showed earlier, black sacrificing a pawn. If he lifts up his rook, he's going to try and attack. He's going to go towards that black king. It's a stylistic option now for Nepomniachtchi.
All right. What will it be on Nepomniachtchi in this situation? Magnus Carlsen has left the board, so he's kind of following Jan Nepomniachtchi's strategy here to stay away from the board as much as possible, maybe.
Yeah, mind games, mind games.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, what will you do, Jan Nepomniachtchi? Will you give us a Tinky Winky in the studio? Probably not.
Oh, please, no.
Please, Jan, treat that bishop.
Well, we do know he's been working with supercomputers, right? There was a university in Moscow that has a super strong computer that he has been working with. So, I mean, is there slight chances, or is it simply a bad move?
It's not a bad move, definitely, if the computer suggests it. And also, I've noticed the more I work with computers, the more kind of concrete my thinking becomes. I start calculating more, I'm more direct maybe, and I start getting kind of infected with these type of computer ideas, and maybe that will happen for Nepomniachtchi. That type of move, though, unless he's studied it before, unless he's looked at this position, it's just incredibly hard to have when your candidate moves. Normally chess players, top chess players, I think this was mooted by Kotov at one point in a book called Think Like a Grandmaster, and he talked about candidate moves. You have 3 or 4 on your radar, you just compare the 3 or 4 moves against each other, you look down the line, you evaluate, and then you pick one. it's going to be very hard for Nepomniachtchi, even if he's looking at 4 or 5 different moves, to somehow take a step back and think, okay, I'm going to retreat my bishop.
I know they have these microphones now, which are quite interesting at the end of the game.
Yeah.
They turn these microphones on so you can hear what they're saying, like, oh, you know, but I just hope they're one-way microphones because, you know, he might have heard us in the studio and he's like, I'm just going to play Bishop D1. I just want to see him wearing that suit. That's it. I don't care about the World Championships. I'm going Bishop D1. But that was quite interesting. Like, so yesterday, they had these microphones where at the end of the game you could hear the players chat to each other straight away afterwards. And I find it quite peculiar that the players do chat to each other so much because it is the World Championships. And,
definitely, and it's so intense, and it's like a war on the chessboard, and they're fighting for this huge title.
Yeah.
And, you know, dramatic stuff happens in the game, and the game is over. What did you think about that move? It was like just friendly.
No, it's actually... Yeah, I was chatting to Jovanka earlier, and we thought that, I mean, the course of that conversation as well, it felt like Nepomniachtchi was trying to take the dominant role. He was saying, OK, I saw this and this and this and this, and Magnus was just saying, oh, yes, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. And it's very rare to see that. Normally, Magnus is the one who sees more or who kind of is more confident about his evaluations. But Nepomniachtchi yesterday, he saw a lot clearly from that conversation they had together.
So maybe it sounded like a nice conversation, but maybe it was part of the tactics for Jan Nepomniachtchi.
Oh, the mind games.
Yeah.
Mind games. I mean, there's been some famous cases, I think, of like people often analyse their games afterwards. This is a very normal thing to do. If you're playing in a tournament, you finish the game, you go into the analysis room to have a look at your games. And I heard a story, I don't know if it's true, that the ex-world champion Karpov, when he analysed the top players in the analysis room, he would play awfully. You know, he would do it on purpose. He'd analyse ridiculous moves, like, you know, where this is obviously before he's world champion, and the guys who are playing was like, how did I lose to this idiot? You know, how could I lose to him? And next time they just think, I'm going to crush him. And of course he beats them again. So again, someone told me this, really don't know if it's true, but a lot of people also try to be very dominant in analysis room. They try to own the person.
Yeah.
And this is really annoying. I hate it when you try to suggest a move and they're like, no, God, no, you can't. Who the hell are you? You know, kind of, oh, God. But they do. So there's lots of different mind games going on after the game.
Even after the game. Yep.
Yeah, even after the game.
Chess, it just never stops.
No, I mean, you get people who, you know, you've beaten, and then they act exactly like Simon says. And when I'm in that situation, I normally go, take it. The point is yours. Because I won the real point.
Exactly.
And, sometimes you get... Actually, sometimes it's surprising how many players are just playing on instincts. You know, I once analysed with a very top player, and I was very surprised. You know, he didn't say to me, I looked at this, and that, you know, because that's what I was expecting. He said, no, he hadn't seen that move.
Oh.
I was like, everything I showed? He said, no, he hadn't calculated that. His instincts were actually refined by the pattern recognition.
Wow.
That was really insightful, actually.
Yeah.
And just to see how selectively his brain had worked.
Yeah, that's the case as well. The first time I ever analysed with Michael Adams, who was the English #1 for 20-odd years, I was just shocked by how open-minded he was. Mm-hmm. When I suggested something, he was like, oh, actually, yeah, that's really interesting. I didn't really consider that. Or he'd say, oh, OK, this position maybe is good for white, not sure. It's about the practical considerations. But, there's also, as Simon says, there's one guy famous on the English chess scene who he's actually several hundred points lower rated than some of his opponents, but he thinks he knows better.
I know exactly who you're talking about. I'm not going to mention any names, but he's not. Let's just say he's not a grandmaster, but he thinks he's like 200 points better than Magnus. You know, so you know you
very confident in the analysis afterwards, basically.
There's a different confident, and then I don't know. This is something else. You know. So do you know who we mean?
Yeah, of course I do.
Okay, there we go.
The best thing I actually saw was actually in Hastings Chess Congress, which is an amazing tournament and got a lot of history behind it. But he was analysing with the Swiss version of himself. Oh, brilliant. And there was like no meeting of minds whatsoever. You know, one was going, I'm absolutely winning. The other, no, you're wrong. And I was just like, I'm going to grab myself a bucket of popcorn.
Yeah. Get the phone out, start recording it. So, yeah.
I'm not David.
Touché. You're very naughty with your phone, David, I have to say, recording things, you know.
I'm just waiting one day, you know, I can sell my story and...
You should start the Chess Gossip Girl column. Yeah.
I was thinking about this.
Ooh, bring us all the gossip from the chess world.
One day, Kaja. One day.
It is. I bet there would be a lot of gossip in the chess world because it's quite a small environment worldwide, right? You would know most of the top chess players.
Yeah.
You hang out at big tournaments.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes is the answer. I think. Yeah, and,
it would fill several volumes of books. I think
definitely. And yeah, maybe we should just keep it there. Yeah.
On that note.
Yes, there's so many chess books on chess analysis and chess games and chess openings.
Yeah,
Give us the next book on chess gossip.
Yeah, maybe tweet us if you like that idea, or if you know any, if you could come up with any good titles of that book.
There was a good history book, actually, and it was published by New in Chess, and it was called Timmon's Titans. And I have to say, he gives a no-holds-barred kind of... he just tells the story of the top players. Okay. And he tells stories that, you know, were known in the chess world, but he's the kind of the first one, in my opinion, to kind of put it out there on print.
For everyone to read.
You start to look at the world champions in different lights and see them as quite human.
Yeah.
Yeah. Going through the world champions that we are doing also, Simon, it becomes clear that many of them were, I heard the word womanizers, you know. They were married a bunch of times and just, you know, played chess.
Yep.
But with girls. Yeah.
But I think, I mean, I think we're looking at Alekhine later. And
yeah.
I think he was married five times, do we say?
Something like that.
Just trying to check my research.
Yeah.
But it was, 4 or 5 times. So it's quite a lot of times.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wondering how we got on this topic.
I don't know, yeah.
We were talking about chess analysis one moment and...
computers and how it's developing the game, and then suddenly gossip.
Chess gossip, yeah. Well, Nepomniachtchi is still thinking for 22 minutes now. Yeah. That's a long think, that is even in classical chess.
Definitely a long think. And
uncharacteristic as well.
Yeah. And before we do a deep dive, maybe again in this position, Mel Griffin has a question, and he asks us, or she asks us, how long do you suggest one takes to study a classical game?
Ooh, that's a very good point, actually. In the past, I always used to say, however long the game lasted, you should spend the same amount of time studying a game. But if you play a 7-hour game, nobody wants to sit there for 7 hours studying. So I would always recommend going through the game on a board first, maybe actually especially analysing with your opponent or analysing with some friends so you get some other opinions. And then afterwards, only then you go and check maybe with the computer to see... just use the computer as a blunder checker. Don't necessarily kind of rely 100% on the computer's evaluation. Often your move is nearly as good or just good enough anyway. In the past, I used to spend a lot of time analysing my games, maybe an hour or so on each game. But these days, I've become slightly lazier, just clicking some computers. And I find I definitely learnt more when I was putting it on a board and analysing with others.
Was it more important with the team aspect before computers? To analyse games, you would need someone to spar with, someone to talk to about the game?
I mean, you had the Soviet school of chess as well. I mean, we're going to come to Botvinnik later on, who was a very famous world champion and really helped the Russians become so strong. And I think his main advice was analysing your games. He said one of your games, you could take a week analysing. So literally a week to look at every single aspect. And I think that's one thing they did a lot to find all the weaknesses, all the strengths of their play. So I don't think you can really go wrong with analysing your games, but I think you can if you're using a computer, because again, it's you've got to understand the why. Why are you doing things? And the computer doesn't tell you that why. And I think that when Botvinnik was doing it, he was trying to understand why are you playing this, why are you doing this, what should you be doing. It's all the whys basically. Why that's well worth bearing in mind, I think. For analysing.
Computers nowadays, they're so good, but they only spit out moves and numbers. Yeah. It's all about the questions, why. And actually, Botvinnik, for example, Kasparov learnt from the Botvinnik School of Chess. I think it's part of their practice. They would show their games to their colleagues and then kind of discuss their thoughts, analyse them afterwards.
And, what is your opinion on computers and how they're developing the game or changing its nature? Because we have a tweet from Bruno who says, and if this is true, stuff so far is just a battle of memorization, much like Fischer said. Opening theory, ruining chess. Having mixed feelings about this.
Possibly. I mean, if you're talking about the very elite level, these 2,800 players, I mean, the top 5 in the world, for them, often it is a battle of memory, but also, I mean, it's a battle of homework. It's like any sport. You do your preparation, you get physically in the zone, you study your opponents, you try and look for these tiny 1% margins. I think that's just the way the world is going. And if we embrace it, computers have taught us so many new ideas. We're just as creative now, I feel, as we were in the past with computers showing us these long-term sacrifices. And I think if we embrace it, then there's a lot of positives. Of course, take some of the romantic nature, some of the mystery out of the game, but That's just the modern world.
Yeah.
If you had a choice, would you go back to the days of pre-computer, or would you?
Yes.
Yes. Well, there you go. Then that's so everything you say is a positive, but just no.
It's unrealistic now, unfortunately.
It is.
We're,
of course,
we're here, and
we've got to adapt. Yeah, we've got to adapt. No, I totally agree.
You do the same, Simon.
Oh, definitely. I mean, but I wouldn't be sitting here broadcasting. So there are positives, but I really preferred it for computers personally, because the memorization thing is I'm too old to do that now anyway, but it's the imagination, I think, is also, you can just refute sacrifices by putting it on your computer for 10 seconds, which is a real pity. But
is that why Fish Random is such a, it's getting more and more popular, this variant where the pieces are placed randomly in the starting position?
Yeah.
Do you think that's going to get increasingly popular?
I think at some point that's the way maybe things are heading. At least in Fish Random, it's more about general understanding and calculation and talent as well.
Yeah.
I had an interesting conversation with Arian Tari, the Norwegian number 2, about these things, and he told me that I value talent too highly, and actually computers, they help people who like to work hard, and that's just as valid.
Yeah.
I mean, not everybody is born with an ability like Magnus to memorize everything, and it kind of levels the playing field. Of course, he's still the best because he uses those tools, but if Magnus didn't, he couldn't rely just on his talent.
I guess it's also a talent to work hard.
Exactly.
And this is something that we're finding now, to work hard and to be very religious in your learning. It is a real skill, and this is what you have to do. Yeah, I mean, it's important.
Like, even things like memorization, it is a talent to kind of go and research memorization and to start learning the techniques to improve that. You don't necessarily have to kind of fix yourself in the whole idea, hey, I'm bad at memory, I'm too old for that. You can actually go, well, let's try and do something about it. You don't have to be at that level all the time. So, yeah, I've been reading a lot of Carol Dweck. Fixed mindset, growth mindset. Yeah.
Well, this is all very relevant when we will be talking about Alekhine later on, Simon. Coming after Capablanca, the big genius, the natural talent. And then Alekhine, maybe known for more studying, doing the work.
Yeah, I mean, I think each world champion we've had has had their kind of distinctive thing that they've brought to the game, even if it's very subtle. And, we're going to discuss this later, but Capablanca, you could say, is more, I would say, more Magnus-like, very natural player. He played very quickly, and Alekhine was obviously a very natural, you could say, genius as well, but he did more work, I feel, to develop the game. He did more opening work, and even if you've got the best talent, it's much more important to have a good work effort than the most talent in the world. You can see very talented players, and it's very hard to judge talent as well. How do you actually judge talent? There was some controversy recently, wasn't there, where one of the seconds of a recent challenger in the World Championships basically said there was many more other players than this contender who were more talented than him.
Oh.
I don't know if I should mention the name, but it's out there anyway. And that was, it was a bit strange, but yeah.
All right. Well, Nepomniachtchi, 30 minutes now almost spent on this move. It is guess the move time, so you guys can still keep your suggestions coming in on #C24 Live.
I just moved. I'll be sitting here for 10 minutes fearing Bishop D1.
Should we remind them about what possibilities we're looking at?
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, so there are a few main possibilities, and just to recap the main moves that we were discussing, that we were showing earlier. We were discussing, for example, White's queen stepping back 1 square, White's rook sliding across. For example, this one is actually the top computer suggestion move we've heard from Jovanka. And just as this happens, he's made a move. Simon, it's not Teletubby.
Get in there!
It's the opposite. It's Harry.
Harry, little Harry.
Harry saves you again.
He does, yeah. Good on you, Harry.
Okay, so it wasn't the bishop retreat that would have got Simon dressing up for us live on the show.
Sure,
it's just a pawn push.
It is just a pawn push, but this was an idea that hardly anyone thought of, in fact.
I mentioned it several times earlier, Jovanka.
Sorry.
I mean, I never really went into detail on the board, but I just said it's so natural. Just push a pawn, create some squares for your king. So now there's no back rank checkmate. The king does have some breathing space. And I guess also it stops the black knight ever jumping forward.
Okay.
So logical, but slow. I mentioned it just because it was on my radar. It's like first instinct, but I dismissed it because it just looks like it doesn't suit the nature of the position. And we mentioned this as black's pretty much automatic reply in every scenario. And
can he play D5 here? I mean, if
that's the question.
I guess if you can place d5 or c5 and d5, you might just at least equalise immediately.
Yeah, so, sorry. In this position, you mentioned c5 as well as this pawn push. You could attack the white queen and then push forward with your pawn.
Yeah, something like this. I mean, this looks, I don't know, again, like a good option for Magnus, I would have thought.
Some calculation, I guess, needs to be done here. Bishop takes knight, for example, could arrive. And if the queen takes, now white would be a pawn up. And maybe this pawn isn't so greatly placed here. White can push forward. But then again, for example, after white's bishop takes this knight, black could consider taking the white knight. And complete chaos.
Yeah,
but
total chaos.
I mean, some tactics you have to calculate. Queen takes queen, you have to calculate. Bishop takes queen. So much to work out here. So Nepomniachtchi just spent 30 minutes on one move. I'm pretty sure we'll see Magnus spend a lot of time as well. Maybe not 30 minutes, but he'll spend a lot of time working out to push this pawn, hit the queen. Personally, I think this one's the most attractive, pushing immediately. And after a trade, maybe trying to capture with the knight, trying to take this bishop, trying to obtain the bishop pair. But then again, we have to work out what happens if white gets greedy and snaps off a pawn. I mean, so many variations, actually.
Yeah,
it's definitely heating up. Yeah.
It's kind of coming to life now, isn't it, the position? And this is, again, what happens. I'm sure Magnus would really want to push this pawn to d5. And, I mean, Magnus plays a lot of subtle chess, you could say, often. But if he gets an opportunity to go active, he will take it. And things could really come to life after this pawn pushes to d5. So getting interesting.
Yeah, I think those are the two main candidate moves, pushing this pawn, opening things up, because black is very passive. You can't just sit back and kind of just do nothing forever, or pushing this pawn forward, hitting the white queen. You can maybe make an argument for the black knight dropping back as well, rerouting it this way to harass white's bishops, but either way, I would be shocked, actually, if we didn't see one of those three moves from Magnus, especially this one right now.
Well, we did have the guess to move on the previous move. Did anyone guess the right move? The pawn moving to h3.
Did.
Yeah.
And the winner of 1 year's membership to G-Chess, well, that is Axel Armour. Congratulations. You are our winner. You correctly guessed that Nepomniachtchi would play h3, and you even gave it a double exclam. So good thinking.
I don't know if that answer should count, because it's not really a double exclam. I mean, we went a little bit overboard there to say it doesn't get any G-chess stuff. Try again.
Simon? One exclamation mark?
Maybe we could push for that. So
he's pushing Harry the H-pawn.
Okay,
maybe you should explain that with exclamation points in notation. What does that mean?
Yeah, so when players write down moves, when you see chess games kind of notated in magazines, for example, in newspapers, an exclamation mark signifies a good move, a strong move, or maybe a move that's not expected as well. Double exclamation mark is just a genius move.
Oh, wow.
Those are quite rare. You want to reserve
like a queen
those.
Sacrifice, stuff like that.
Exactly, for the really, really genius moves.
How about blunders? Are there? What would they look like?
Question mark.
Of course.
And the type of move that I play quite often, double question mark for the big blunders.
He's so not telling the truth.
No,
he's this British sense of humour.
Too modest, way too modest.
No. David doesn't make a double exclamation mark move.
I wish he did.
I don't make double exclamation mark moves.
No. I got my words bumped. Question mark moves.
Okay.
Sorry, David.
No, that's okay. And occasionally you see a bit of a mix. You see exclamation mark, then a question mark. That means interesting. And if you see it the other way around, question mark, then an exclamation mark, it means dubious. So a bit of a dodgy one. Not bad, but dodgy.
Okay.
I can remember the first time I played David, and it's interesting because we're talking about time control, and I didn't realise it's a bit different to the standard time control in internationals now, where they're not getting increments. So normally in nearly every chess tournament played, you make a move and you get a bit of time added to your clock. And I think it was Aronian, world-leading player, who said yesterday that he felt maybe Magnus is a little bit uncomfortable with this format, which is the old format. You don't get added time. So if they do get short time, you can hustle your opponent. And this is the way it used to be for the first 20 years of my life. And I remember I was playing the Isle of Man competition. I was playing a young kid. Went to the board, this young kid, nice kid, very well-mannered. And he was sitting there, and I was playing him, and I heard he was a real talent. Be careful of this kid. But I was like, I'll be all right. Wheel out the English opening, and we play a very long game. And this kid, unbelievable, the time would get down to 1 second. And I'd be looking at the clock, and I'd be thinking, he's got 1 second left, and then very calmly just go and play a move, and then get another extra 30 seconds. Like, oh, come on, man. Next move. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I'd be like, this went on for about 40 moves, and I wasn't used to this time control, and I thought, what? I just thought, he's got to lose on time at some point. He ended up crushing me, ended up beating me, I ended up crying. This kid was running around happy, don't know about running around. And of course, it was this guy sitting next to me, David Howell. So he used to like playing with fire.
Yeah, the fantastic.
Even when he was a kid, which is quite funny.
The fantastic David Howell. Yeah. Okay, we have to go down to Dubai because Tanya has a bunch of interesting guests around the venue where the players are sitting.
Thanks, Kaja. I am outside the venue now. Those are some fascinating stories. We see the challenger and the world champion, the current world champion, fight it out for the world championship match. We know Jan Nepomniachtchi and Magnus Carlsen, two of the best players on the planet, for just how strong they are at the game. They come across as these beasts, these monsters over the chessboard. But there's a human side to these two players. And I am very pleased to look into that side, to get more insights into that. I've got a very special guest with me, and it is Grandmaster Sergey Yanovsky. He's a long-time guide, trainer, friend to Jan Nepomniachtchi. He's been in his team. He's a manager now. Thank you so much for joining us, Sergey.
Thank you. Yes, really. I started to work with Jan when he was 10 years old. And when we started working, Jan was the European champion among kids 3 years in a row. It was 2000, 2001, 2002. And in the 2002, he made the golden double. And also he won the world championship. And in this championship, he tied the first place with Magnus Carlsen. But according to the special rates, he was the first and Magnus was the second. And I just remember that after this, the end of the championship, next morning I met Magnus and his father, Henrik, at the tennis court. And I was very pleased that Henrik and Magnus congratulated me very warm manner. So I was very pleased with the gentleman style of behavior, because I was a little bit worried that they're very disappointed that they tied the first place, but they were not lucky, and Jan is the first. So that was very nice impression, very long ago, 19 years ago, but still I remember this day very well.
That is incredible to hear. Now, you have known Jan throughout his career. Seeing him now fight for the World Championship match, starting from winning the European Youth, beating Magnus Carlsen there as well. What is the feeling of seeing him fight it out on this stage?
I would say that the feeling is that sometimes our dreams come true. Yes, of course. Then he was a little boy, and then he saw the awarding ceremonies at the very big tournament. Jan was very ambitious, and he said, one day I will be on the stage and I will be the first. And now this dream come true. He is fighting for the World Championship title. I'm very glad and really happy that it's really now.
That's really, really nice to hear. Now, the thing is that, Sergey, we often see when we think about Jan, we speak of speed, we speak of how dangerous and aggressive his chess style is. But there's always this human side to all these players. And is there something that, the chess world doesn't know, or something that surprises you sometimes in real life when you feel like, all right, Jan has this side of his personality as well, because the Nepomniachtchi that we know is an absolute beast on the chessboard.
Yes, of course, very often the player expresses his character in his chess games. But I will say that, of course, Jan is a real fighter. Yes, he is very ambitious. He never thinks about the draw. He tries to fight for the victory till the very, very end of the game. But of course, in the real life, he is not such a monster. He is a very intelligent person, and he is very caring to the person who are near him. And so I will say that he managed to have different features in his character, and he may be very soft and intelligent from one hand, and a real fighter from the other hand.
Incredible. And Sergey, what do you think? You've known Jan for so many years. What are the qualities that he has that separate him from his colleagues?
I will say that, to my mind, Jan is one of the most talented chess players in the world. And in general, it is my own opinion, but I think that in his generation, he is the most talented. To my mind, he's even more talented than Magnus, but the thing that Magnus is a very stable person with very stable nerve system and very good physical conditions. So I think that the harmony of all these features gives Magnus the advantage. That's why he is the first for so many years. But the specific chess talent, to my mind, is the most bright for Jan. He is the most bright chess player. The specific chess talent is the most talented person and the most bright chess talent in the world. That's my own opinion. Of course, I don't insist, but I will just share this opinion with you.
And tell me, Sergey, now, when Jan was growing up, you were his chief trainer. What is your role now in Team Jan Nepomniachtchi?
Now I just I will say the coordination of all efforts and just the organizational role, first of all, just the role of the chief of the delegation. It is necessary to coordinate everything, many things, and it was started from the choosing of the place where we live during the tournament and everything, all physical training during the match, before the match. So very many different problems which is necessary to face every day and to solve these problems every day also.
And it's so important for these players to have someone around them who they've known for a long time, who give them these positive feelings. So, of course, it means a lot to Jan to have you with him here as well.
Thank you very much. I hope to help him, and I do my best in this direction.
And my final question to you, Sergey. Like you mentioned, you've known Jan for years. You've worked with him when he won the European Under-10, Under-12 titles. Similarly, you've seen Magnus grow up as well, because he and Jan have been friends. They've been playing together in these youth championships. What is your opinion on Magnus Carlsen?
I will say that I have very positive opinion about him. He is a real fighter, but I think he is a nice person and he is very friendly to his colleagues. And I will say that I think he is a very good example of the real champion. And I think that he is very popular among his colleagues. And also I think it is very important that he organizes a lot of tournaments now during pandemic. And it helps a lot of his colleagues to make some profit. Then normal tournaments are out because of these lockdowns and all this. So I think he also cares about chess in general, about the development of chess. So I have very high opinion about him.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sergey, for sharing your insights and impressions on the players. Wow, Sergey Yanovsky giving us the human side of the two of the best players on the planet.
Thank you so much, Tanya. So interesting to hear from one of the persons closest to Jan Nepomniachtchi in Dubai. And now we're going to keep talking about world champions. We've reached the fourth one, and that is Alexander Alekhine. Became world champion in 1927, overtaking the title from the genius Capablanca. And I heard, Simon, that he's maybe a little bit of an opposition to Capablanca. What was the style of Alekhine?
Well, Alekhine is certainly one of the strongest world champions, and he did a lot of good things to chess, but His style can be defined as very dynamic. He had very good positional foundations, so he tried to always, like previous people, like Steinitz, the first world champion, start attacks from position of strengths, but he'd also be a very aggressive player at times, very tactical player. So he's kind of an all-rounded player, but he's a real believer in the centre. He loved attacking from the centre. If you look at his games, a lot of people have learned how to play just by understanding his feeling of the centre of the board. Gain the centre, and once you gain the centre, it's like a battlefield. If you control the battlefield, the centre of the battlefield, you can attack your opponent's king. So he did these he brought these things to chess. He showed it in his games. He had some very nice opening theory things, so he brought a lot of opening ideas as well, and very highly respected even nowadays by his peers.
All right, well, Magnus Carlsen, is he a fan?
He's a massive fan, apparently. Yeah. I mean, Magnus really knows his chess history. I think a lot of the younger guys who are so keen on memorising their opening moves, they forget about the chess history, but Magnus certainly does. And I think just talking, we can see that a move's been played, and that is a really surprising move. We'll come back to that a little bit later, but Magnus just playing c6 there, and that's a move I think we didn't expect over on the panel, but we'll be back there very, very shortly anyway. Yeah.
Let's check in with David. Are you surprised, David?
Yes, I'm surprised. I'm also impressed just by Magnus Carlsen's patience. We were talking earlier, Simon, about just maybe this being the moment to press forward, to neutralise white, to take direct action, but no, Magnus just maintaining the status quo, pushing a pawn, controlling some squares, and also maybe just the black queen now helping to protect black's isolated pawn over there on a5. So sensible. We'll analyse in a bit more detail a bit later, but back to you guys.
Yeah. We're going to keep talking about Alekhine and talking about Magnus Carlsen, being a fan of Alekhine. And, OK, so Capablanca, the big genius, Alekhine maybe, studying harder, bringing openings into the picture. Who would they resemble today if we take it into today's top chess players?
I mean, I think you could say that Capablanca was certainly quite similar to Magnus. I mean, just because they were very natural players, they liked the ending, so that was some similarities. Alekhine was a much more dynamic player, quite a dynamic person by the sounds of it as well. I think he is, as we mentioned earlier, married like 5 times. I don't know if dynamic's the right word, but something like that. And I guess, when you look at Alekhine, you would have to say dynamic player, like we have Ali Reza, Firouzja. Maybe you could compare some aspects of the game to that. Someone quite opening theoretical, so like Garry Kasparov, he uses openings to get good positions and then turn those into attacks. So dynamic players. I'm not saying Magnus is not dynamic, but maybe some of these other players.
Yeah, you have a position up here. Something
I do, yeah, just
typical?
just to show how dynamic Alekhine could be. And this was from younger, from the start of his career, really. He was very strong at an early age, and we can see that his pawn is attacked. Obviously, that pawn ready to whip the queen off there. But this didn't stop Alekhine from moving his knight. And this looks like a crazy move because it's like, well, the queen can be taken, but if it's too good to be true, we know what they say, it might be a trap. And he grabbed the queen here. But now, the thing I really like about this puzzle, I love knights. There's something really nice about the way the knights move around the board. And this knight now comes back, giving a check to the king. The king has to move, so it moves up here. We even use our friendly H-pawn.
Oh, yay.
Of course, to give another check. The king comes here, and the final move here, which maybe the viewers can find, is to do with the other knight. You just got to find a square where it can give check, and this knight jumping in there is actually checkmate. So a very pretty finish, and I think a very artistic finish. And Alekhine was amazingly good at putting these attacks together. So, yeah, nice combination.
And he became world champion in 1927, overtaking the title from Capablanca. Were there some controversies there with these two, players, and Capablanca being such a popular player as well?
Yeah, I think Alekhine, and again, I'm saying the English pronunciation. I'm sure I'm going to get in trouble from our Russian friends here, but Alekhine was he was a bit controversial throughout his life, really. A lot of things he did, but in general, I think the most controversial of Capablanca was, he won against Capablanca, but he was really resilient, and he didn't really allow Capablanca to get a rematch.
Yeah.
So normally you'll give a chance to get a rematch, but this didn't happen. And I can see we've got another move over in the game. They're coming a bit quicker and faster now. Bishop coming back to c2 there, David. Looks pretty sensible.
Very sensible, and it does look like both players just trying to avoid the immediate clash between armies. Both just taking a time out, controlling some squares, and sensible. Once again, we'll dive into the complexities and the nuances of this move a bit later on, but at the moment, still the calm before the storm.
All right. Well, we're heading back to the 1920s then, when Alekhine became world champion in 1927. He kept his title, but then he lost it. So he didn't let Capablanca have a rematch against him. He kept his title. He lost it at some point, but he regained his title also. Was Alekhine a dominant player of his time?
He was very dominant. He played a lot of tournaments as well, and he dominated those tournaments. I think he got 14.5 out of 15, something like that, against other great opposition. I mean, he did maybe dodge Capablanca a little bit. It would have been lovely to see them, maybe a wise dodge. And, you know, he also had an interesting life. He came, you know, he was brought up in Russia in very hard times. The war was ravaging, and he moved over to France, and he represented France for a long period of his life. And maybe he played life like he played chess a little bit. He was adapting to scenarios, trying to do the right thing for his situation. But interesting, and the most interesting thing is probably his friend, his best friend, his cat, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know if we can bring up his... Oh, look at that. So
he would actually travel around with his cat.
He would, yeah, and not very normal, really, to travel with your cat, but he would go everywhere with his cat.
Really?
So whenever he played a chess tournament, he'd want to take his cat. So his cat was his travelling friend, and he had a very appropriate name as well. He was just called, I believe, Chess. So Chess the cat.
Chess the
there
cat.
You go. Yeah, so maybe the first famous chess cat.
Well, we saw the first world champion, Simon Steinitz, with a very nice beard.
Yes.
Maybe you're a little bit inspired by Steinitz. Are you also a little bit inspired then by Alekhine with your cat?
Well, yeah, I do have a ginger cat, Charlie the chess cat, so he doesn't come around to chess tournaments with me, but yeah, you know, I like cats.
Yeah?
Yeah, definitely. So,
all right.
yeah.
Well, Alekhine, he was born in the Soviet Union. He became French. He was French before he became world champion in 1927. And such an interesting story, a dramatic life. He even died before anyone took his world championship title away from him. And I know that down in Dubai, Runa also knows quite a bit about Alexander Alekhine.
Well, yeah, for sure. This guy, as you mentioned, is an extremely dynamic player. He also had an extremely dynamic life. So we actually had a bit of trouble finding out which pavilion actually to go to. We are at the French pavilion because for the longest time he lived in France. He was a French citizen, and he played for France for the longest time. But he was not born. Alekhine was not born in France. He was born in the old Russia. He was born to an extremely wealthy aristocratic family. Then something happened called the Bolshevik Revolution. That was not so good for the aristocrats and the very wealthy. His father lost his life, and Alekhine had to flee the country, and he fled to France. So there he played, and for many years, and he played very, very great chess. But trouble was still looking for Alekhine, and of course the Nazi army invaded and conquered France, and Alekhine was not able to get out in time. So throughout the war, he actually had to play under the Nazi flag. They forced him to play under the Nazi flag. So I would say that's probably the most controversial thing he ever did throughout his life. He later expressed that he was very, very unhappy with this. He said that he had no choice. And as you correctly say, Kaja, after the war, he moved to Argentina, where he lived until his death. He died holding the title, so far the only player to die holding the title. But he wasn't world champion all the time because Max Euwe, the Dutch brilliant chess player, defeated him. And Max Euwe is also an extremely interesting guy, a guy who literally changed the rules of chess through mathematics. So that is the next thing we're going to talk about. We are going to head to the Dutch pavilion, and I trust that Simon can enlighten us on the style and play of Max Euwe in the meantime. Thank you very much, and back to you guys.
Thanks so much, Runa. It's fantastic. You're such a big chess fan and been reading up on chess history. And so much fun to listen to your stories about Alekhine, or Alekhine. which I guess is the right pronunciation in Russian. Yes. All right. Well, are you a big fan, David?
A huge fan, and actually one of my first books was a series of Alekhine's best games, I think by himself. Just some annotations about some of his favourite games, and already in those days I was thinking, I can't attack like this. It's too clever. It's too strong. And yeah, of course, colourful character as well.
Yeah. And we did, Jovanka, you were saying?
I was just going to say, every world champion that I've read about has, when they were kids, studied the games of Alekhine and read his books. So, Alekhine.
Alekhine, yep. All right, well, we had some moves on the board, David.
Yes.
We dig a little deeper into them.
Yeah, so we've had 2 moves, 1 move per player, since we last kind of dove into the position. And it was here that we left it, with Magnus debating whether the moment was right to push his pawn in the centre. And as we mentioned, this would have created complete chaos. It would have led to some really forcing sharp lines. For example, after the pawn step forward, a trade here, and Magnus, he would have had so much choice. He would have been able to take with the knight, the bishop, maybe even with the queen. All of these have pros and cons, but Magnus decided it was too much to consider, and he deferred this decision. So instead of that move, he just pushed another pawn forward, maybe supporting this pawn push later on, so he would have another pawn to recapture and defend that square. Also, as mentioned, opening up the queen's protection of this pawn in conjunction with the rook. So white should not get tempted to take this pawn now. This would be a bad material imbalance for white after a capture here, and at the very end, black would have gained 2 pieces just for a rook and a pawn, and the 2 pieces here, the 2 minor pieces, will be stronger than any rook. So Nepomniachtchi, instead of going for that variation, simply stepped back with his bishop. And this might look a bit clumsy, all of these 4 pieces now stacked up together, but there are definitely ideas behind Nepomniachtchi's last move. He wants to, at some point, maybe, for example, if black just waits, white will step back with the queen, and soon a battery will arise against the black king. There's a threat against the black knight, and if the black knight retreats, suddenly the white pawn steps forward, and we understand why Nepomniachtchi has put his bishops on this square. There's actually a checkmate threat in the position, and black's king now in huge, huge trouble. So, okay, Nepomniachtchi, with his bishop retreat, putting his bishop on a potentially good square, Magnus now needs to find a way to react. I don't think he can wait much longer. I don't think he can just maintain the status quo. It might well be time for black to push this pawn and at least clarify the central situation.
Yeah, and I was going to ask that question, is the time now to push in the centre? Just play d5, break open the position, because, like you say, if he waits too much longer, then, all that pressure is going to make it impossible to break, and then the position will become very unpleasant.
Yeah, these bishops still strong, but at least now you have created threats.
Should we look in what happens if he tries to break in the centre now?
Yep.
Sorry.
So, yep, this position on the board.
So, yeah.
After d5, I guess white will take it. Black has a choice of which way to recapture. You can take back, actually, in 4 different ways. He's played it, Magnus. He has decided not to wait any longer. The game is definitely heating up now. He's pushed this pawn forward. White will take this pawn, I think, no matter what. You have to capture, and now Magnus has a choice. Pawn takes, bishop takes, knight takes, or even queen takes. It's all about this square, the d5 square. And first instinct would be just to play pawn takes pawn and force the white knight to make a decision, maybe even to step back. But then again, now black has 2 isolated pawns. White doesn't have any isolated pawns. So long term, this is risky. In an endgame, black would be struggling. And we know Magnus doesn't want long-term deficiencies in his position. That being said, if you take with the queen, again, you might have to consider a few things. But also, once the queens disappear, at some point, maybe this pawn will be attacked. For example, here, white could consider maybe capturing this pawn, and black needs justification for doing this. Maybe you're okay, maybe you move the knight out the way, you're attacking lots of things, but calculation needs to be done here. Either way, I think after this pawn takes pawn move, Magnus will continue thinking. And what do you think, Jovanka? Which way to recapture this guy?
Oh, with a bishop. With a bishop was my vibe.
Okay.
Because, I was a little bit worried after knight takes, the line that you demonstrated.
So after knight takes here, maybe the white queen might even step back, again threatening some nasty, sneaky checkmates.
And you have to make a pawn. You have to push a pawn, actually, to defend against that deadly threat. And
maybe you're okay.
Maybe you're okay.
It's a bit shaky, right?
It does feel a little bit shaky, because now, having provoked that weakness, the queen can actually step forward again.
Later, maybe you try and sneak in this diagonal
instead. So that line doesn't really appeal to me too much, but bishop takes and a queen takes, as you showed, I didn't like that at all. I felt it was
Yeah. It's possible, but
riding
shaky.
on the edge and kind of bishop takes. Is there anything wrong with that? So I can see.
I think there's nothing wrong with any of the recaptures, to be honest. I mean, some
be.
may be slightly better than others, but none of them lose on the spot at least. And we would see a trade of rooks at some point. Maybe white would take these rooks off the board. Maybe the white knight can jump in.
Yeah.
It's not winning the game for white, but it's slightly unpleasant for black potentially, especially if white can obtain the bishop pair. White's bishops will be very strong, and next move, white can eliminate one of the strong black bishops. So, OK, current position is this one. Not that one. It's this one. And right now, Jan Nepomniachtchi just baiting whether to capture this pawn and force things to accelerate.
Yeah. You said it's heating up. What do you mean by that? Is it easier to make errors? Is it easier to see that the players are ambitious?
Well, the position has opened. And when the position has opened, then every single move counts. You know, we just saw in some of those lines where white was attacking a rook and a bishop, white was threatening checkmate, and so every move starts to matter. Gosh, I feel like we have to run through some of those lines again. Like I'm thinking, which capture? I can't make up my mind.
I'm not sure yet. I mean, we'll go into that in a moment. I just want to think as well about why Nepomniachtchi's still
Is he considering
not moved yet.
Pushing his pawn forward?
Surely not.
No, that doesn't kind of...
Yeah, I think there's only one move that I would be considering here. Pawn takes pawn. Maybe he's just trying to look into the future, 4 or 5 moves ahead. But what other options does white have here? If you don't take black's pawn, then you might have to just start retreating, and that's not a good sign. So, Simon, what do you think? Good timing by Magnus, this last pawn break, this pawn push?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think he has to play something in the centre, otherwise white's just going to have a space advantage, and d5 is extremely thematic. You want to liberate your pieces, and he has played e5.
He has.
So he's pushed on, so that's a bit of a surprise there.
Wow. Yeah, I dismissed that. Sorry, Jovanka, I feel guilty now.
No, don't know, because I actually thought when we were going through the lines of pawn takes pawn, I was thinking, hang on a second, I can't see a good recapture. So pawn pushing, attacking the knight.
Wow,
I agree with you, David. It doesn't look as good as pawn takes pawn.
Yeah, so after black did push forward, white has bypassed this attack. So instead of taking and asking the question to black, how are you going to recapture? Jan Nepomniachtchi pushed forward, and this is a counter-attack. Yes, the white knight will drop, potentially, but then again, the black knight would drop. And if we compare the pawn structures in this endgame, for example, if the queens disappear as well, if we see a trade, then suddenly black's pawns, we see that they're extremely weak. This is isolated, these are doubled, this is isolated, and this is also isolated, whereas the white pawns are nicely coordinated, nicely connected. These two as well could potentially defend each other. So endgames, maybe not so appealing for Magnus, but for example, if the knight moves, is Jan Nepomniachtchi just going to jump into the position? Maybe he's going to jump in with his knights, and he actually had this type of knight yesterday.
I remember.
Magnus had this type of knight with white. Black also had a very strong knight at some point, but if we saw this knight eliminated, then suddenly these two bishops, I think, are just too strong. There's actually a direct threat of checkmate. White's queen wants to take this pawn, in teaming up with his bishop, and
if the black knight is forced to move, that means it maybe has to go into somewhere very daring, right?
I mean, maybe you have to try c5 here. I mean, the thing is, this is one of the positions we talked about. You have all this building up to the crescendo, to the violence, and the violence is now happening on the board. If I was black, I'd try to play with as much tempo as I could, and I think a move such as pawn to c5, just pushing that pawn up to attack the queen, makes sense. I want to push the queen away, and I want to try to avoid you going queen d3 in some positions, but I don't know if he's played that. It looks like he's taken something, and
he's captured the knight.
I'm very surprised he's gone for this ending. He must have something up his sleeve here, because as you pointed out, David, it looks structurally really bad. I mean, there's two ways to assess a position: the pawn structure and your pieces. And if you're just going on the pawn structure, Magnus would be in trouble. But he's got an idea clearly here.
Okay, so the queens disappear before white recaptures the knight. So white temporarily a piece down, but after this queen trade, we will see white take this knight back. And suddenly this is a big weakness. These guys are doubled. Ugh. I'm not so confident for Magnus.
David, we also talked about this rook over of Jovanka's, the rover, the rook swinger, and it's one of those positions where if black does ever capture on f6, that's going to become certainly an idea, maybe after taking on f6, if you want to go super aggressive, something like this,
Playing for checkmate even though the queens are gone,
Yeah, those bishops.
They're just raking bishops. I have a suggestion. Instead of capturing the pawn, what happens if you were to go, okay, there's a lot of danger in the position, let's play my bishop out, my dark square bishop, and that's the move I want.
Nice.
And just try to relieve the pressure a little bit.
Yeah, this is clever, actually, just hoping as well for white to trade the bishops on black's terms. And suddenly these two pawns are connected once again, and they become very, very powerful. They'll start marching down the board. I guess white would have to ignore this trade, just pretend that there was no tension here, and maybe, for example, pawn takes pawn. And if you want to regain this pawn, which is protected by white's bishop, then you'd have to trade at some point. And maybe it's not so bad for black, but still structurally, these two are not necessarily better than white's one. So.
Are you saying you're getting worried for Magnus Carlsen now?
I think he should be fine, but he's got to be accurate and energetic. Normally, when you have a bad pawn structure, for example, in the situation that's now about to arise on the board after queen takes queen, okay, he has taken with the rook, so we will reach this position. When you have a bad pawn structure as black, you have to be energetic. You have to compensate for the lack of positional pluses in your position. You have to compensate with dynamic play.
I really like this bishop b4 move that Jovanka pointed out because, as you say as well, David, it's one of those.
Play it.
Yeah, it's a really nice find by Jovanka there, and it's one of those positions where you want to get to as near to a draw quickly as you can. So you want to swap off, you want to eliminate things, and you might have to suck up a little bit of pressure. But as we know, Magnus is world champion for a number of reasons, and his defensive play is one of those reasons. So things clarifying though, and we should be able to make a good assessment in a couple of moves' time.
Okay, so we predicted this. White captured a pawn, so temporarily white is a pawn up. Temporarily white has a 4 versus 2 advantage on this side of the board, but this intruder will disappear soon. And
should Nepomniachtchi now play for a win?
I think he would like to, if possible. It's not clear exactly how, despite the fact black has these weaknesses, it's not clear how you get to them. It's not clear how you create any pass pawns as white later on. So, for example, you could trade here and, okay, there's no rush to take this pawn. For example, black's rooks could start maybe entering open lines. Both of these guys are pretty good, actually, these two rooks. Or maybe you could even try and jump in at some point into white's camp.
Yeah, I'm sure this is Magnus's idea because we talked about pawn structure and pieces, and his pawn structure is pretty bad. He can't do anything with the black pawn, so he's got to look at his pieces, and you've got to look at your pieces, how to improve them. The black bishop at some point could come into that central square in the middle, but using those rooks seems really normal thing to do here.
Yeah.
Try to get active, try to exchange off, but there is a danger in a lot of endings, I feel, here with black's pawns. So if all the rooks are removed from the board, I'm pretty sure you take white to win the ending because the white king can come, and it could be.
For example, let's just get those rooks off somehow.
Yeah.
If all the rooks disappear, then black is simply, I think, in trouble.
Yeah.
These three will beat these two, whereas on the other side, black will not make any progress.
But I just feel by virtue of the open lines and white's pawn, 2 pawns on the left side aren't great either, and I'm just thinking. Actually, after bishop takes bishop and the rooks come into the game, I think maybe Magnus might be feeling quite positive if he's able to coordinate the rooks, especially on the second row. And it's not easy to defend that weak pawn sitting on a4.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess white can play rook ed1 and try to put a king on e1, but definitely black has that activity at the moment, and activity is very important. I mean, I would say, is general sum up, this should be a draw, but it feels like maybe Jan is playing for the 2 results, and this is like a perfect scenario to be in. And what the 2 results means is you're playing probably going to be a draw, but you have the winning chances. I can't, unless a mistake is made, see Magnus winning this position.
Yeah.
But draw looking likely. But we're going to have some more adventures first.
Yeah. It's definitely not a dead draw, but maybe with best play, black's activity, especially with the rooks, will compensate for the deficient pawn structure. So.
And they're playing quite fast now after both of them having long things at some moment in the game. Both
players spent nearly half an hour on one move, and clearly they'd calculated ahead. That's why these top players are so good. It's not because they're indecisive, and it's not as if they're freezing for those 30 minutes. They are really, really making these hard decisions.
Yeah. Would you have rushed with capturing the pawn on g7?
Probably not, but I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with it either. You were preferring
I was
the rook
preferring
coming in.
to mobilize rooks, so I was either thinking put the rook on the other rook that's not working, put that on the B line, and then threaten to come into the second row. I felt that there was no rush.
Did you see that stare from Nepomniachtchi, looking straight?
He's got the best stares. I mean, if there's a staring competition, he wins it hand down. I mean, he reminds me of Kasparov. Kasparov was like the best actor in chess. He was really. You mentioned his aura. His aura was powerful, and he could use his body to translate energy to the board, it seemed. And he had this. His opponent would play a bad move, and he'd be like, he'd be all over his shop. He'd let his opponent know. And Jan just reminds me of that. I don't think he does it consciously. I think it's just a subconscious thing he does, but it must be a bit intimidating to have that, you know, have that stare. And again, there's another English grandmaster I can think of who very famously stares straight in your eyes, and he doesn't take his eyes off you. He's
for the entire game?
For the entire game, he will just stare right in your eyes. And I think there was a famous story once when he was playing another English grandmaster, and that grandmaster said, do you want my phone number or something? It's like, you know, which was mind games again, you know. So, but it's quite off-putting.
Okay, so
Simon, your plan is coming into fruition.
Bringing the king towards the centre makes a lot of sense there. So.
Once the queens are off, the kings are never going to be in any danger, right? So they might as well help out. And now white, I guess, is also ready to evict any intrusions by the black rooks. If the black rook, for example, on the d-file just comes in to the second rank, white can just challenge it with his own rook.
Maybe black's plan here is to try and get rid of this bishop. I mean, if I was black here, king f6, bishop f5, I want to get to a rook ending. My rooks are on the open lines, as you've pointed out, and I just want to get rid of the bishops so I can try to get to some of these key squares for my rooks. So that's the way I might be looking at this, to try and get rid of the bishops as black. You've always got to consider, especially in the ending, what pieces will help your position if you exchange them and what will make them worse. And we've said that if you exchange all the rooks off, that's a bad exchange for black, but maybe the bishop exchange is the way to go. I don't think he'll get it in, but you can try.
Yeah, really interesting, actually, and that's very instructive. Any endgame, or even any middle game, you need to ask yourself which pieces, which trades will benefit me. And maybe Magnus is going to go for this, actually. The more I look at it, the more I like it. If, OK, let's say white just makes a move. If we do see this bishop trade, just to highlight the squares you mentioned, Simon, now that the white light squared bishop is gone, the black rook has access to this square, also supported by a pawn, and the other rook has access to this square. And both of those would team up against this poor white pawn. So this, it's not 100% clear who this would favour, but it does look like black would be happier if the bishops leave the board. And also, in general, right, it doesn't hurt to put your king nearer the centre. If all the rooks disappear, at least you're quicker to get into the middle, and then you can choose which side to run to. So that would be very sensible. Maybe white could stop this by, I'm not sure, lifting up a rook, just to try and create a pin if this ever happens. But at least then the white rook's committed itself to a square it might not want to be on. So yeah, I like that idea. Alternatives would be just to slide across, right? To try and come in. And if there's a rook trade, maybe one set of trades is okay, because then the black rook could try and come in. But it's not entirely clear, because if the rook does come in, white can just defend and then slide across and evict again.
I mean, it's a crazy idea of going rook b3 with a bishop on c2, but I think that's a little bit too much. I mean, okay, I don't believe it. But
this sacrifice.
Yeah, I mean, it is an exchange, and it's probably just a great way to lose. But I mean, you maybe have to think about it. The pawn is very strong, and you might be able to cause some.
In the right moment, right? Because here, I mean, white could go rook takes bishop, but at the right moment, this could be a really dangerous idea.
It's maybe something to think about as well. So there's lots of things still going on. It's going to be a long game, I think, this one. I still prefer white just because of the structure, but I think Magnus will be okay.
Yeah, it feels like Magnus should be okay, but he needs to be energetic. And that's why we've been talking about computers a lot today, right? So it says 0.0. The computer thinks with best play it's a draw, but it doesn't necessarily show us whose position is easier to play and who the stakes are higher for. If Magnus is careless for 5 moves, maybe the computer will start saying +1, +2 for white. But I think if Nepomniachtchi is slightly careless for 2 or 3 moves, I think he should still be able to draw. So,
I mean, I think Magnus has made a career winning 0.0 positions or 0.1 positions. This is something he's done. But this is one of those positions where I don't think he's going to be pushing. Certainly not.
Do you think good strategy then from Nepomniachtchi, take all the risk out of the position, and just before the rest day, he can push now for the next 10, 20 moves at least?
I think he'd be very happy with his position because he shouldn't lose. I mean, I think that's clear that with correct play, he shouldn't lose, and maybe he can just play without risk-free, going to the rest day with at least an equal score. But one thing's for sure, this World Championships, it's been very exciting so far. And it's people who are massively backing Magnus. I mean, it's not going that way at the moment.
Yeah, on that subject, I've heard many grandmasters actually say, you know, Magnus will have an easy journey actually to the top. It will be such a straightforward match, difference in class, but you know, absolutely not. From these last 3 games we've seen, the difference in quality. I think they've been matching each other actually every step of the way. Magnus has forced Nepomniachtchi to be resourceful and find good defensive moves on occasion, but I mean, both sides, I've been very impressed with both of them.
Yeah, it feels like Nepomniachtchi, he's levelled up over the last year or so, and he's definitely playing on Magnus's standard right now. And I had an interesting chat a couple of days ago at the Goodnight pub with a Norwegian grandmaster, and he said he gave 98% chance that Magnus would win. And I was just shocked. I thought, I mean, Nepomniachtchi's playing so well.
Yeah.
And meanwhile,
98% is crazy.
Yeah.
He was saying
crazy.
He was saying 14 games, 100-point difference between their ratings, but
crazy.
In one-on-one encounters, it's a completely different
and
dynamic.
with the teams as well that have been working intensely.
I mean, let's remember, Jan has a plus score, I think, against Magnus. So the only player to have a plus score. So
Magnus has only ever beaten him in 1 classical game, right?
But it was their most recent one.
Yeah, that's
well, the most recent decisive result. They've played several times since that.
Yeah. Okay, we have some moves on the board.
Okay, Black's Rook took an open file, and White's Rook has challenged for that open file. So we could see a trade of rooks on the B line right now. What do you think? Will Black rush to trade? Or will Black just bring the king closer to the centre?
Okay, he's bringing the king.
So your idea, Simon?
Yeah, I mean, if you can get this bishop f5 moving, it just, at the right time, it feels he's going to be absolutely okay.
To trade those bishops.
I don't know if Jan can get any... I mean, it is getting blood out the stone. That's what you need to do in such situations. But, you know, at the moment, I can't see it. Can't see how he's going to do it.
So if Magnus was right in this situation, because you're saying it's basically a two-result game right now, it's draw or maybe slight chances for Jan Nepomniachtchi. If Magnus was with the white pieces, with his style of squeezing until the very end, would you have then thought it would be a long game? Magnus trying to get that win?
Definitely. I think he'd at least take it to move 40, and then he'd have an extra hour, and he'd find ways to maybe set traps or slowly start making these small gains step by step. But Nepomniachtchi, we did see it in game 1. As soon as he slightly turned things around on move 40, he pretty much took a draw instantly. He didn't even try to press. And it's difficult to call, but it feels like Nepomniachtchi, if he gets a chance, he will try at least to put some pressure on.
What is it like for Magnus to sit at the board? Well, he's not there right now, but to play this game basically knowing that he's only playing for a draw?
I mean, with the black pieces, it's not the worst case scenario. If you're white and you're only playing for a draw, then it's a bit depressing. Just you lose the moral victory. But he's quite a realist. He's quite a pragmatic player sometimes, especially in World Championship matches. We've seen in the last 2 matches there. But if it's a draw, if the opponent's played well, he's okay with that. And he'll move on. And he knows that if he does hold Magnus in this game, after the rest day, he's got white. He's got more whites left than black. So, yeah, it's... if he holds this, I think he'll be pretty happy.
What piece or what situation on the board for Jan Nepomniachtchi gives him the better position, even if slightly?
All the rooks off the board. And talking of all the rooks off the board, he's going for that now.
Could we see a repetition of moves, actually, with rook takes rook, and now Nepomniachtchi will go rook, will challenge his rook,
instantly.
And then Magnus will say no and move it, and then they could shuffle.
They could yo-yo. I mean, you also maybe have to think about taking bishop f5, but that's just not going to work, is it? So no, not at all.
Maybe we can show this.
Just trying to swap everything off, but yeah, it's a bad exchange.
So we're not expecting Magnus Carlsen to take these rooks off the board right now. Simon, you mentioned this trade and possibly black stepping forward with a bishop, but unfortunately, this is why we talk about exchanges, right? Just because right now these two are basically the same as this one. And therefore, white simply has a 3 versus 2 advantage on the side.
I think he might have taken that rook off.
Okay, so he has taken the rook.
So he's very confident in this ending.
I'm surprised, I must admit, because I was expecting Jovanka's move of just running away with the rook and maintaining the status quo. He's traded, he's put his king in the middle. What do you think?
Well, I think he will hold this because he's Magnus. But I wouldn't like to. I don't. I mean, maybe it's absolutely okay because the pawn on a4 is on a light square. But I wouldn't like to be black here, personally. I mean, Magnus will show us the way, I'm sure. But
I think he's got a very concrete idea in mind, actually. He knows that he will guarantee getting a pawn to this square where he can blockade on the dark squares. If white, for example, were able to somehow, say if black just waited, if white were able to somehow get some checks in and get these pawns rolling, these 3, get them marching up the board, then I think white's just winning.
Yeah.
But in the current position, if white pushes forward, then the black pawn steps forward, and there's no way that you'll ever be able to get in with the white king.
So could you okay, you have to maybe stop this plan. Can you try to go h4 and g3, but that's the h pawns could be too weak still. So this is a very good plan.
The pawn is still going to march up.
It is. If there's a trade, then suddenly.
Yeah.
I was wondering whether you could be crafty and try to sacrifice something for the time.
Okay.
And just so that you can get the time to come in with your king.
You would love to push this pawn forward, right?
Right.
To try and check, but it does come at the cost of this guy.
Exactly, and so the idea is then...
Okay,
well, they didn't play that.
Maybe after f5, he can try g3. This is...
So Magnus rushing forward with this pawn to act as a blockader. You mentioned trying g3, Simon, pushing this pawn, but...
You just push anyway.
And okay, you can put your pawns all on dark squares, but the problem is the white king never gets in now. For example, black can just park this bishop in the middle.
I think, again, it goes back to the pawn structure and pieces, and the king is a piece. People forget that the king is a very important piece, and black's king on e5 is a much superior piece to white's king, and that is holding the balance for Magnus. Do we think this World Championships could be 14 draws, like the last couple of World Championships?
No,
what do we
I
reckon?
don't think so.
I just can't see it. I can't see it at all.
I think that there will be a lot of draws.
Yes, yeah.
But the way that these two have been playing, and also the complexity of the positions that they found themselves in, I just think it's only a matter of time before someone makes a big mistake and there is a decisive result.
Yeah, Nepomniachtchi doesn't look happy right now.
No.
He just had his head in his hands and he's realising he's just a move or two too slow to create any chances.
Yeah, I think you can see there, again, you can read him sometimes, and that strikes me as he's given up winning chances just with that body language.
And his last move as well, not necessarily improving the position, just putting his bishop on a slightly
So
square.
they're not allowed to offer a draw before move 40. But they can, of course, have move repetition. Is that what we're about to see, you think?
I find that rule very strange that you can't offer a draw because, OK, I can understand it in other tournaments where there's lots of players, but it's the World Championships. You know, you're playing one-on-one. Why can't you offer a draw?
It's part of the psychology, just to tempt your opponent or see what their mindset is.
Yeah, just, you know, I think I find that a peculiar rule in the World Championships, but I'll get myself in trouble again for saying it. Very good at that, generally.
That was a very good point, yeah.
But why can't they offer a draw? There's no one else involved.
And it's not like they're going to want to play quick draws, you know, to have a quick day, you know.
No, there's no reason to have a quick draw ever, so... Yeah, it's strange.
I've got to say, guys, I predicted before this game that it would be a Roy Lopez, that it will be a draw in 42 moves. So I'm hoping that they get to move 42.
I did the same as you, but I said 55.
Ooh,
so
I'm not sure you're going to get there, Simon.
No, I don't see it. We're not even at move 40 yet, are we?
And we're not even going to ask what I suggested.
Me neither.
Bottom place again. Although I still have some chances if they agree a draw, right? If they agree a draw within the next, if they somehow find some repetition now.
They're repeating here. Bishop c2, bishop b1. Is that a repetition?
Well, black's pawn is now on a different square.
Oh, okay.
The F pawn.
Yeah. But they might just look at each other and kind of...
Yeah, and say, like, OK. I think Magnus is looking at his score sheet there, maybe looking to see, can I offer a draw even? I potentially...
I don't think they can offer draws.
No, they can't. No.
What would happen if they did? Would the player who offered the draw be sort of lost?
They'll be sent to the naughty step.
They get a pawn taken off. So, okay.
Well, they keep pushing pawns, so we're not quite there. So maybe 42, David.
Maybe. I think it might happen on move 40, actually. But,
oh, imagine if you get a full score.
Oh,
wow, that would be impressive.
That would be very impressive, yeah.
I should mention as well, just good strategy there. I mean, a draw will happen, but good strategy from Magnus Carlsen. He's got a light squared bishop, so he puts his pawns on dark squares. That's just something for everyone at home. Not every bishop endgame is drawn. This one happens to be. But if you get a chance, put your pawns on opposite squares to your bishop. Your bishop will control the light squares, your pawns control the dark squares. And also here, because white has a light squared bishop, he cannot target your pawns while they sit on dark squares.
This is just looking like a draw, isn't it? I mean, there's no way really either side can do anything. You need to get the king in, you need to get a passed pawn. I don't see how this is going to be possible to do. So,
and you can see on his face now, Nepomniachtchi, he knows there's nothing to be done. White will never be in trouble because you have a pawn majority, a 3 versus 2 on the right, but you can't make any progress either.
No, it should just be a draw.
And the key thing is that Magnus should not get too ambitious and start pushing pawns. I'm thinking primarily of that pawn on h6. You shouldn't touch that pawn. It's on a dark square.
If you put it on a light square, it will get fixed on a light square and it will be a target for white's bishop.
Oh, Jan, looking up at Magnus.
Okay.
And again?
Okay, I was wondering about this move. He's putting his pawn on a light square, which is not the strategy to do, but which means he's given up all winning chances. But I guess he's just going to put his king next to that and just do nothing, literally.
Yeah.
So
it's a bad strategy, but for here, it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's no way Magnus can get through. I mean, if the last move that Magnus played, he's trying to get his king. The only way the black king can get into the position is doing that creepy, crawly method into g3. So it sort of comes on the dark squares down towards white's pawns, but that will be stopped.
That will be stopped, yeah.
So
and is there any kind of... I mean, if Magnus does get his king as far as it can possibly go, so I'm thinking the h4 square, I mean, is there any kind of chance that Magnus can trick Nepomniachtchi? Because there aren't too many waiting moves with the bishop.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe Nepomniachtchi has to be slightly careful here because if... OK, he has pushed a pawn.
That's a good point.
If he had just slid his king across here, black's king would come in, and even if we reach a situation like this, it might just be what we call zugzwang, where any move for white worsens his position. If the king steps back, the black king comes in. If the bishop steps back, it has to keep an eye on this pawn, then the black bishop comes in. And suddenly, not easy at all. Maybe this would even be very strong for black. But of course, Jan Nepomniachtchi, he's too good to miss such things, and he does push this pawn forward. Just a few moments ago, he pushed this pawn forward to stop the black king coming closer. And now if we catch up with the play, the players, they are about to agree a draw. I think there's no way in for the black king, simply.
David's going to get a full...
If you get... Is it move 42? This
it's going to be 39.
This could be
I reckon
amazing.
It's going to be 42.
You could get there. I mean, can white play g4? I mean, this is the... I mean, it doesn't really do anything, I feel, but you're trying to get a passed pawn, right? So why, you know, we could try. Or g3. Yeah, g4 or g3. I don't know which one is... Maybe one of these moves. I mean...
Yeah, just hoping that there might be a trade and that later the white king can sneak in.
Yeah. I get a passed pawn, you know, it's an ending. But OK, this is still a draw, even if this is played.
This is still a draw because I don't think white's king can get much further into the position. He hasn't even gone for this, Jan Nepomniachtchi. But also, even if you push with this pawn, I think black can just wait. And this square's covered. And it's about to be a draw. Let's go back to the players.
It's a move 42, David.
Could
it
41.
Be?
It's move 41.
Yeah, but it's going to be for his...
Did you get it? Move 40.
Oh, move 41.
Oh, that's incredible.
Move away for David Howell to get his perfect score on the Magnus Nepo Prediction Challenge. It's a draw in Game 3 between Jan Nepomniachtchi and Magnus Carlsen. And it's a quick draw. Let's hear if they talk again today. Silence from the playing menu today.
No discussion.
No discussion today. Jan Nepomniachtchi is leaving. They have only played for 2.5 hours, right? Or 3.
3 hours and 42 minutes. No? Oh, no, it's only 4.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, 2 hours
2
and 42
hours
minutes.
and 45 minutes. So it's, in classical chess, a quite quick game, a quite quick draw. After 41 moves, it is over. But this, again, an interesting game, and we were especially interested in the game following that analysis from the dark web.
Yeah, the dark web. So much intrigue, right? And as soon as the game actually veered away from known territory, it was actually at this point, this was where we had the guess the move, where Simon was worrying, sweating about this bishop retreat. But maybe Jan Nepomniachtchi not so familiar with the ideas. Maybe he got to this point. I mean, this is move 20. That's impressive preparation, but he didn't know any further. And this pawn push just felt maybe a bit too slow. If he'd stepped back with the queen, Magnus would have had to be very careful of potential pawn breaks. Instead, after this pawn push, this innocent pawn push, it felt like the game was fizzling out. But Magnus, with this pawn push now, did manage to equalise quite easily.
This is the kind of game which I think there's a press conference.
We're going to head down to Tanya for a reaction from Magnus.
Magnus Carlsen, hva vil du si om partiet i dag?
Det var interessant, relativt velspilt, vil jeg si. Han fant en...
Wow. That was the Norwegian channel asking Magnus some questions. You were going to say, Simon, something about the...
I was going to say, before the match, this is the kind of game that I thought would happen more often. I thought it'd be like White trying to push, looking like he had some advantage, but then when Magnus has the black pieces, defending incredibly well, and maybe even, well, surprising me a bit with the position, the resourcefulness in the position, and he's going to be very hard to break down and to beat if he plays like that with black with e4, e5. I don't know how Jan's going to get through, but he seems to do everything very, very cleverly there, Magnus. I mean, obviously Jan played well at the same time, but this d5 move was perfectly timed, and he knew the ending was okay.
Okay, we're heading down.
Yeah, I wasn't thrilled to have this ending, but I felt that it was generally well within the drawing range, and I was happy to liquidate, of course, to this pure bishop's ending, because I get to centralize the king and push the pawn and create a barrier.
Now, at least traditionally, World Championship, hold with black, try and push with white seems to be the strategy. How do you feel about the positions you've gotten so far with the black pieces? Happy with the prep? Happy with the way it's going?
Yeah, the positions are fine, pretty much. Today, I was trying to play a bit of a sideline to try and get a game, but yeah, eventually I just had to try and liquidate, which I guess is what you normally end up doing in these positions anyway.
Is that what Rook E8 was all about?
Yeah, Rook E8, it's really, really dumb. It's a really, really dumb move, because usually you would try to go Rook E8 without D6. But it turns out even here he was well prepared, and he didn't give me any even slight chances to play, so I was happy.
All right, and finally, 3 big games. Tomorrow's a rest day. Relieved?
Yeah, it's good to get a rest day. Now I've had 2 black games so far, so the result is okay, but obviously gotta try and create some chances at some point.
Thanks, Magnus.
Finishing off with a smile on his face, Magnus Carlsen talking about the game here. Some notation. Can you take us through what Magnus is talking about, David?
Yeah, so first of all, Magnus mentioned the barrier he was happy to set up right at the end, and that was actually in the final position. Just to explain to the viewers once more, White simply can't break through. White has a better pawn structure, but this king is trapped. It just can't get past these 2 pawns. So that was the first thing. But also, right back, if we rewind all the way to the opening, Magnus mentioned this position where he said, Rook E8, it's a dumb move, but it was his preparation. So clearly that's his strategy, to surprise his opponent. He said it's a dumb move because he could have played this earlier and saved a bit of time, but playing it now did... Well, the intention was to lure Nepomniachtchi out of his preparation. It turned out Nepomniachtchi was very well prepared up until move 20, or around move 20. And at this point, we saw later on, after the bishop came forward, that was where Magnus said, OK, it's fine. After White pushed this pawn forward, he liquidated, he swapped off all the pieces, he traded queens, knights, and everything, and eventually got down to the draw. So could have been better, could have been worse from the world champion's point of view.
And he's saying it's a good result. 2 games with the black pieces after the first 3 games. They are still tied, Jan Nepomniachtchi and Magnus Carlsen. Do you think Jan Nepomniachtchi, Simon, is happy with the situation after 3 games?
I think he'd be mildly happy. He didn't really get many chances in that game. He missed some chances in game 2. So did Magnus. He did say, like, with the white pieces, this is important. That's where he's going to get his points from. He hasn't got a point from the white pieces, so it just seems very equal to me. I mean, I think both sides have got things positives they should concentrate on, and we'll have to see if Magnus can use those white pieces to create some chances, as he said there, in the next couple of games.
Yeah, and you were updating us, Jovanka, on every move that was following some opening preparations, something that had been analysed only 2 days ago. What do you think is going on in the two teams right now?
Well, I think there will be some words with someone, you know, as to how this analysis was allowed to be available to the public. But I mean, in the big deal, I mean, it's not really a big deal, I don't think, because it was just a one-off opening, and I do think that Magnus will be varying within the Rue Lopez.
All right. We are waiting for the press conference, of course, to start, where we will also hear from Jan Nepomniachtchi. Usually it starts in 10 to 15 minutes. We're going to head back down to Dubai to Rune, who's been, I think, hanging out with someone who's been at every single World Championship match that Magnus Carlsen has played.
Well, hello and welcome to our first installment of our new concept that we call Chess Players in Buggies Getting Tea. We are outside the deck that is inside they are playing, and we are here with woman Grandmaster Anastasia Karlovic. You are the press officer for this event, is this correct?
Actually, not the press officer for this event, but I've been the press officer for the previous World Championship matches. Yes, Rune, nice to see you.
So nice that you could join us for this. In the driver's seat, we have Eskil, famous from the Ask Eskil segments, and please take us away, and let's talk about chess a little bit.
Of course, pleasure.
How many chess world championships have you been at?
Good question. Actually, my first World Championship was in 2010 when Wisha Anand played against Veselin Topalov. It was in Bulgaria, in Sofia, and I was a photographer at that time. But since 2012 until 2016, so for the 3 World Championship matches, I was the press officer for the events where Magnus actually was taking part. So since Magnus became the world champion, or no, before that, when Gelfand played with Anand also in 2012, I was there. Yes, and after all, I was in Chennai, I was in Sochi, and I was in New York in 2016.
So you have a lot of experience at these matches. Is there anything you would say is different about this one in particular?
Okay, first of all, we are in Dubai, you know, we're here in Expo, and I think it's well organized World Championship match, and we have still, something is still the same, we still have Magnus here, so it's like the same thing after all, and it's a really interesting match. I mean, literally, it's unclear who is going to win, and maybe there's something which makes it also very exciting for everybody. I mean, taking into account the previous score between these players. I mean, looking forward to see how the games will develop.
Thank you very much for the insight. It looks like we are getting to the tea place now, so Eskil has gotten us to the awesome place where we can have some nice tea. Thank you very much for the insight, and back to you guys in the studio.
Thanks so much, Rune. It looks so warm and nice down there in Dubai. Tanya is, of course, also on ground and taking us into the action of everything that's going on. Quite quick draw today, Tanya, but again, a very interesting game.
Absolutely, Kaja. We've had 3 draws so far, but they haven't disappointed. I think today's was definitely more strategic, more solid than what we've seen in the first 2 games. But I think we were speaking about this at the start of Game 3, that, you know, with the rest day coming up, the players might have a slightly more solid, safety-first approach. And I think overall, a very high-class draw played out. Now, there's so much activity going on in Dubai. There are, of course, chess players from across the world who've traveled to see the games, but not just chess players, chess fans have come here as well to enjoy this World Championship match in a very iconic venue, the Dubai Expo. And I've got one such special guest with me. It's Hubert Menard, who's here all the way from Malaysia for this match. Thank you for joining us, Hubert.
Yeah, thank you. It's just out of coincidence, actually, that I arrived here. We had a meeting for a week in the Northern Emirates. And I know these World Championships that don't come every day, so yeah, I was just lucky to be here in Dubai, and I took the chance to come, and it's been a wonderful experience actually. Yeah, and the games are pretty good actually. I think now with the rest day coming, I think now Magnus will have white pieces, so maybe we'll see a very explosive game. Fourth game, looking forward to that.
You were supposed to leave Dubai a couple of days ago, and then you found out the match is happening and decided to stay back.
I knew the match was there, but you know, I took the extra days, of course, and managed to get a ticket as well. And yeah, I'm very happy to be here and meet all of you guys. It's a great experience. Yeah.
Is there a player you're rooting for here?
Which one?
Do you have a favorite here, a player you're rooting for?
No, not in particular. I think it's good. I think it's good. Any opponent, right? For Magnus is a challenge. It's good to see some changes. I think Jan is a very explosive player. So I think it's. I think even if you see somebody win a game, it's long. It's not finished so quickly. I think it's 14 games, right? So there's a long way to go.
And as a chess enthusiast, what do you think about the vibe and the atmosphere here in Dubai?
Well, I mean, it comes at the same time as the Expo 2020, right? So Expo 2020 is the biggest one that's ever been. You know, Dubai is always the biggest and the largest. And so it's the same here. I think they did a great job, actually. I was quite impressed, actually, with the setup. So big, so huge, very comfortable seating, a little bit cold, though, but we got through that, otherwise people might fall asleep. It's a long, but I think overall, yeah, pretty good to have it in Dubai.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to hear that you had a good time at the match. Thank you. Well, that's what it is all about. Chess fans from all across the world, enthusiasts, tourists, they're all here for the World Championship match to witness who will become the next World Chess Champion. Tomorrow is a rest day, and I'm expecting a big fight as Magnus takes on Jan Nepomniachtchi with the white pieces in Game 4.
All right, thanks so much, Tanya. And that game will, of course, also be Magnus Carlsen's birthday, Game 4 in Dubai in 2 days. But we are still waiting for press conference now after Game 3. Before that happens, we're going to have a quick commercial break.
Today, more than ever, when the world comes together to create a better tomorrow.
It's going to be magic.
Oh,
La magie.
magic. Magic with music.
With architecture.
With colors.
Magic with celebration.
With your safety.
From here.
There.
And everywhere.
For 6 whole months, day and night.
Join the making of a new world, starting October 1st.
Up my rocker, but follow me, I'm ahead of the game. I'm ahead of the game. I'm only ever slinging, I'm working overtime. Got the song and I'm the singer, the melody, the vibe. I'm a prodigy, logically, I'm impossibly wanted, and I remember my name. I remember my name. Ooh, well, I'm ahead now. I'm ahead of the game. I'm ahead of the game. Well, I'm ahead now. I'm ahead of the game. I'm ahead
This is John. John loves to study chess. This is David. David loves to study chess as well, but efficiently. John spends more time setting up the board and figuring out what's on the page of his book than he gets to study. David likes to take it easy and use his time wisely. David has finished his exercise for today. John should try the same.
Okay, so let's send a challenge.
Here is challenging. Nice graphics, easy to see. What are you thinking about? You're looking how it can be the most painful?
Exactly. Okay, fine.
That I give up a phone. He wants to be even rude.
Now anyone can learn and improve their chess skills with the world champion, Magnus Carlsen. The Magnus Trainer app is packed with fun mini-games and interactive training content. Playable anytime, anywhere. Get the Magnus Trainer, available in the App Store and Google Play.
Welcome back to the Chess24 Global broadcast. We are waiting for the press conference after Game 3 in Dubai. That one, too, ended with a draw. Magnus Carlsen and Jan Nepomniachtchi are tied after 3 games. Tomorrow will be a rest day. Do you think that's very welcome for them now after 3 intense games?
Yeah, we heard Magnus admit he needed a rest. Also, it's just nice to have some time where you can chill, you can study some chess, you can actually have a proper chat with your team. And I know that both players, they will be feeling energized in Game 4. And that game, I think, will be highlighted in Magnus's calendar as the time to start making his move, to start throwing everything at the Nepomniachtchi.
What is rest days about, do you think, Simon, in the World Championship match?
Well, I know for Magnus, it'll be sport.
Yep.
He loves doing a bit of sport, just to feel good, hanging out with his friends. I think there's no point looking at loads of lines. I mean, he's been doing that for his whole life. He's been doing that for the last month. I think it's time just to feel good and just to feel relaxed. Go and have a cup of tea with your friends and play some football or something. That's a great way to rest.
Do they at all sort of talk with their teams about preparations, or do the team work and the players relax?
I think in Magnus's case, I think the team very much does the work and are there on hand to help Magnus relax, just play as many games as possible. Because, you know, one thing about Magnus is that he can never fully detach himself away from the game. You know, you see that even before this World Championship match started, he was still on Blitz websites just playing 4.5 hours of Blitz. That's just the way his mind works, and he's like working things out. So I think he would very much do what Simon said, you know, just relax, but then at the same time play some games against his teammates.
Yeah. And do you think, David, that there will be some cleaning up in the teams if it turns out that someone has forgotten to make that analysis private?
I think for sure there'll be some stern words. It might not come down to Nepomniachtchi or Magnus Carlsen to deliver those words to the teammates, but I mean, the bosses of those teams, they will want to make sure that nothing leaks out. And it's tiny, tiny margins at this level. We've seen both players obtain such a high level at an early stage, and one small slip like that might derail them psychologically or might derail them on the board later in the tournament. So, yeah, I think every little detail at the moment is essential.
Yeah, and Magnus with the white pieces in Game 4. What will you put in as predictions on the predictions challenge, Simon?
I go along with what David said. I think this is probably Magnus's time in round 4, because the first 3 rounds they're always going to be quite nervous because you're getting into the flow. You're trying to get a feel for your opponent, get an idea what kind of not opening moves, but opening ideas they're going to play. And now you've got the white pieces. You have a rest, you play some football, you're feeling good, and you really want to start pushing. And I think having white in round 4 is a big advantage, actually, to Magnus. And I think this will be time for him with the white pieces to push. But of course, Jan's playing incredibly well, and he's not going to be easy. And we saw Magnus even maybe over-pressing in the last round, so it can go wrong if he tries too much. So, yeah, very interesting game coming up.
What will you put in, Jovanka, as predictions?
It's a difficult one, actually. I have a suspicion he will continue with pushing his queen's pawn forward. I mean, he had quite a sharp battle in the game too. And definitely lots of room for diverging. There's also lots of room for improvement. So it worked well, I have to say. You know, he did manage to put Nepomniachtchi under pressure. So why not stick to the same formula? You know, we saw Nepomniachtchi again. Also, he stuck to his formula. So maybe we're just going to see big battles in the one opening.
Yeah. Well, David, we did check the Magnus Nepo prediction challenge, and even you weren't able to submit your predictions for the game yesterday, and you're still very much to the top of the table. What was it?
I think I'm 39th in the world right now. But there's hundreds, maybe even thousands of players competing. So I'm gutted I didn't put my prediction in yesterday because I would have guessed the right opening and the right result. But no, it's just fun to be a part of it. I definitely recommend everyone at home to join in as well, join in the fun.
All right. The press conference in Dubai is about to start. Let's head down there.
Just a reminder for the photographers to stay low as we have cameras in the back. And for the journalists, after we're done with a few preliminary questions to the players, you can go to the microphones to the left and right of the room. Do not touch the microphone and always leave your mask on when you ask any questions at all of the players. Jan, you had your second white today. Was there a point in the game you felt like you might have had some chances? It seemed like it petered out pretty quickly.
Well, I guess I could roughly say that opening ended up in my favor. Like I got some very slight edge, but it looked like it's going to be, let's say, long term. But then, well, this A5 move from Magnus is, I mean, positionally surely questionable, but seems like after some pretty precise problem, after some precise moves, black can be close to equality. And, well, I mean, d4 looks absolutely natural. And, I mean, perhaps, I mean, okay, if I would realize earlier that after d4 and exchanges after bishop e6, I can't basically prevent d5. So after d5, black has some decent counterplay even in the endgame. I would probably play it differently, maybe, I don't know, some h3 or knight e3, just play it more slowly. But, you know, after bishop c8, d4 looks like very natural, so black has all his pieces onto the last rank. But, yeah, somehow after bishop e6, it's really hard to do something, so I spent quite some time, and, you know, probably the best try I found part of h3 was, I believe, knight d2 move. But even then, okay, I could for some Marshall-like, okay, we're playing anti-partial, but anyway, Marshall-like extra pawn against two bishops, so basically extremely close to a draw anyway. So that was it.
Are you feeling any frustration about the fact that you haven't gotten going, so to speak, with the white pieces yet?
No, I mean, okay, absolutely no frustration. So I guess it was a clean game and a very logical one, and you know, even in the end game, if I would be, you know, given a you know, couple of tempi, I could pose some problems in this, like, say, bishop end game. But I mean, okay, especially once black king enters c5 and the 5 f4, there is never anything for white. But well, I mean, this is you know, the current status of the chess theory. Yeah, so it's hard to find some advantage.
Magnus, is there anything sexy you could say about today's game?
Well, I mean, there's a lot that I could say, but yeah, I generally agree that I was obviously making some fairly ugly moves, but it seems all to work out reasonably well. At least I couldn't see any concrete way to pose serious problems. So I think it was a reasonably logical game.
You seem incredibly comfortable with the black pieces so far in this match. Is that the correct sentiment?
I would say I wouldn't say very comfortable. I feel like I've been trying to equalize in both games without getting a lot of chances, but it's okay. It's a fairly normal procedure in these matches.
Jan, the trouble of the white pieces, as you made it, is documented nowadays. It seems very difficult to get advantage with white, even after months of preparation. What are you going to need to do to change the trend?
No, that whatever am I going to do, the trend will remain the same. So that's not about my preparation or Magnus' preparation. That's about, let's say, the current theory status.
Magnus, what's going to be the difference maker? You guys seem to be punching it out right now on even terms.
Well, it's 3 games then. There's a lot of time to go, and as you saw yesterday, could easily have been a decisive result. So, it could. Obviously, for each game, the most likely result is a draw. I mean, there's just saying otherwise would be quite disingenuous. But I mean, any game could explode. Just not today.
One last question for you. The tension, people see draws and they think it's just draws, it's not so interesting, but you've been a part of these so many years. How does the tension grow with each draw?
Yeah, as you say, obviously, as the match goes along, with each draw, you get a bit more tense. But I would say so far, yeah, it's 3 games, and personally, I've been black in 2 of them, I'm fairly satisfied, and there's a lot of time to create something. Although obviously it's not ever going to be easy against a very strong opponent.
All right, if I may ask the journalists, you have again microphones at both sides of the room. Here.
So Jan, I wanted to ask you about one moment. So when you played Rook E8, were you expecting Knight A5, which is sort of the main line, or?
You mean Knight A5 instead of Rook E8?
Yes. Was that something you were expecting, or was Rook E8? Was it a surprise?
Well, in some way, I expected everything. So I guess after such long preparation, you more or less try to be familiar with most of the moves. But I'm sure there are also maybe some worthy tries which haven't been played yet. But yeah, okay, Rook E8 is one of the pretty logical sidelines. Like this whole plan is very healthy. Rook E8, Bishop F8, H6. Yeah, so a little bit like Zaitsev variation. Yeah, but I mean still very very nice for black.
And then to Magnus, I wanted to ask about this moment with H3. If Jan had played Knight D2, was your aim to play D5?
Yeah, as Jan mentioned, we'll after D5 pretty much by force get this ending with an extra pawn for white, which I thought was just a dead draw.
So even if the bishop, would come to C3 and pawn on A5, was your idea to reroute the bishop to A6 possibly, or did you think?
No, I mean I thought the bishop eventually after D5 everything gets taken. You take on A5, Rook A8, Bishop C7, Rook A4, Bishop goes to E5 and then C3, and then you go F6, King F7, H5. The bishops are just way too strong, I think.
So you would say that you were more than willing to go into this endgame, or did you consider perhaps playing another move to keep things going and maybe perhaps some chances?
I hadn't decided yet, but I had I had that in reserve, at least I thought. So there might have been other options, but It didn't feel realistic that I could actually play for something, so probably that's what I would have done.
And I know on the first day I asked you about football player.
I'm sorry. We have to give all the journalists an opportunity. You can come back on the mic if there are other questions. Sure. Thank you.
Hi, Saravanan from ChessBase. Ian, in the official commentary, Vishy Anand was discussing about your opening strategy. To quote him, in every match, people have tried different strategies against Magnus, but so far they haven't cracked it. Ian's strategy seems to be very reasonable. His style has been classical. He's playing the Rilopers, the Catalan with black. For the moment, he's playing the main line and it's working for him. Was this your strategy? Would you agree with him? And do you think it's working for you?
No, but as Vishy said, it seems very reasonable for him, yes? Yeah? So actually, I also hope it's reasonable. But I guess after 3 games, it's too early to discuss the strategy.
Mike Klein with chess.com. This question is for Magnus Carlsen. Magnus, this is far from your first rodeo, and I know you have processes that have probably been established. So I'm wondering, how much are you trusting your team for in-match opening improvements, or are you still very hands-on in the middle of a match when looking for opening improvements?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. I don't wanna say too much, but it's always a combination that obviously you have a good team that you trust, but I mean, at the end of the day, I'm making the decisions.
Hi, this is Jan from BST from Montenegro. I have a question for Jan about the move h3. How happy were you at that point to make that kind of a move? Can you walk us through what was going on in your head at that point?
No, I think I surely won't tell you what I was thinking. But in general, I found out that d5 is likely inevitable, and this was a way to improve my position before d5. So maybe I could capitalize on that if black would push d5 immediately, but I guess also d5 should work pretty nicely. But yeah, somehow after h3, c6, it's not such a great important tempi, but h3 could be useful, yeah, in many lines. So I'm not getting mated on the first rank, at least.
Thanks.
I am Rune from the global broadcasts of Chess24. The question is primarily for Magnus, and would also love to hear if Ian had a reaction. It appears that today's game was analyzed in an online database all the way up until move 20 2 days ago. If this was somebody from your team who forgot to make it private, how would you react?
I don't think. I don't think any of us can reasonably comment on that.
Well, I can only say that normally you try to switch up this online cloud option in your chess base when you analyze, yeah, to make sure no one uses let's say, your fruitful analysis. But I mean, it could probably be a coincidence as well.
Okay, thank you.
Alexander Evstigniev, TV channel Russia 1. My question is for Jan, and I will ask.
All right, you guys, we got an answer to our question. Kind of what you read out of that, David.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's nice to see them both smiling to that question.
Definitely.
I mean, you could see Magnus's mind racing, right? He was like, oh my God, who was it? But yeah, of course, they can't reveal anything in public about who it might have been or what happened. But either way, it seems it was a bit of a mishap and someone made a bit of a blunder there.
In his team or Jan's team?
Oh, I have a feeling it might. Oh, no comment.
It might have been Magnus's. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, the way his eyes just kind of went, and then he laughed, and it's like, oh.
So, do you think we actually caught it? That there has been a mishap in the team?
I think so. Yeah, I think just the reaction there, that was the most I've seen him laugh.
Yeah.
Smile with a question. So it's a very good question. But yeah, well done, Jovanka, for finding that information.
Yes.
So like,
yeah.
I think we should all become detectives, guys.
Yeah, right, right.
Let's do it.
Well, and you said it, definitely modern chess. We can actually follow what's been analyzed on an online database and see the game unfold as well. Is it a shift for chess, what we're seeing?
It's a shift. I mean, it takes a lot of hard work, a lot of time, a lot of energy to go and delve into the deep, kind of dark corners of all these different openings. But at the same time, it does make it more exciting for us watching the games to just try and figure out what's going through the players' minds, what the teams are working on, what the coaches are working on, and it just adds a new dimension. And for that, I'm quite appreciative.
Yeah. All right. Well, it did end in a draw, this third game in Dubai. Tomorrow's going to be a rest day. Let's take a look at the schedule for the Chess24 Global broadcast. On Tuesday, Game 4 will be the next game. Magnus Carlsen will have the white pieces, and we start every show at 1:00 p.m. CET. That's 4:00 in Dubai. That's going to be 7 in the morning in New York. Tuesday is going to be the next game. Game 5 will be on Wednesday, and then another rest day on Thursday before the next games on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Tomorrow's going to be a rest day. How are you going to enjoy that, Simon? In Oslo?
By resting, I guess.
Yeah.
I'll probably have it's a lovely city. I'll probably have a little walk down the harbour, and I hear there's a ski run, so I might go to the top of that and run down that. Who knows? Just see a bit of the scenery, I think, and just take it easy. So, yeah.
And personally, I can't wait for Game 4 on Tuesday, but also because it's the birthday day. It's Magnus Carlsen's birthday and someone else's birthday as well.
Ooh.
So don't miss it. It's going to be a day of celebration, a day of a lot of exciting chess.
Definitely. We're going to celebrate both Ginger GM Simon Williams here in the studio and world champion Magnus Carlsen turning 31 years old on...
31, whoa! Awesome.
Turning 31, on day 4 in the World Championship match. It's been an interesting day, not too long day. Maybe Game 4 will be a longer one. It's been nice having you joining us from around the world. Thanks for watching, everyone. And hopefully we'll see you on Tuesday. Bye.
Bye.